You can't say that synergy ruined the game, like, with one face, and then turn around and say, well, the synergy didn't really matter because lower players didn't use the synergy anyway, with the other way. You can't have both. It either ruins the game for low-ranked players, or it isn't impactful whatsoever. Which one do you want? Which one do you want? 66 is Overwatch Flat Earth. Now, it's hard to know what Freedo means by flat Earth. He could either mean that there's obvious, easy to refute evidence of 5v5 being better, that 6v6 people are purposely not engaging with, or maybe he's just referring to the like conspiratorial thinking and calling people shield and that type of stuff. I scrubbed through to look at the topics. So Samito 6v6 army, best 6v6 argument. So he does engage with 6v6 arguments for all of 3 minutes. Good job, Freedo. Very open-minded of you to engage for 3 minutes with somebody else's arguments. Let's see what Freedo's got to say for himself. And yes, flashbang, Jesus Christ.
I've been a competitive gamer for as long as we've had online games. I started with Quake 3 as a kid, to StarCraft as a teen, Dota
Yeah, I am only doing the Freedo videos today.
1, then Call of Duty, where I was a content creator for years, and then after that, wanting something more hardcore, I went to Counter-Strike, where I played with a small friend group, and then Overwatch, where I decided to pull together a few of those CS friends and try to cover it professionally. In that time, I've seen the reputation of Overwatch shift more harshly than any game that I can remember. At launch, because the entire gaming industry still thought of Blizzard as the golden child, Overwatch, with all its flaws, was accepted with open arms by everyone.
Blizzard was the golden child because they were still making IP. Immediately after Overwatch, they stopped making IPs altogether. After Titanfall and Overwatch was produced, Bobby started the life support mode for the company. And the life support mode essentially sucked the life out of anyone with creative talent and made them move elsewhere. And then we ended up with the constant churn and turnover of every single dev at Blizzard. It's like, yeah, I mean, this is kind of what happened. I'm going to put on a light behind me. It should help balance out the flashbanging.
At the time, no creator dared to be critical of Overwatch because the popular sentiment online was to want positivity. It was actually hard for me personally because I wanted the game to improve and I had lots of criticism to give. So while I try to be polite about it,
there was a lot more casuals around, a lot more people that hadn't engaged with the game, a lot more World of Warcraft players that had come over, and Diablo players, and actual Blizzard fans that came over to Overwatch, and those people are fans of the company, so they didn't want any criticism. I get it.
But we told Blizzard to get their shit together for years and years, and they seemingly were always behind servicing the game with what it needed. Balance was slow, features were lacking, and the devs seemed content with the game being an actual unplayable mess for most of its life. That was unacceptable to me. The entire
I think that it's still exactly the same state. I know it's better, but it's still the same state. 100% exactly the same. In terms of the things we're missing, we're trying to be a live service game with a hero every 3 months. And basically, if that hero doesn't pop off, there's really no life in the game for 6 months. And the Blizzard company, whatever they have in the Overwatch team, Team 4 in general, just isn't capable of producing content fast enough to keep the game fresh and interesting like other live service games like Fortnite. So I do think there's a big crunch that's going to come when Marvel Rivals and other games come along and start competing for the live service like model, because they're gonna by default be able to produce stuff faster than Blizzard and be more fun and interesting than Blizzard. There's been a lot of talk about how Blizzard should be producing big updates every 3 months, like Flatsits has said 4 months is like the minimum, is what he said to the devs when the devs were saying 6 months. And I didn't think they can do it, and I certainly don't think they can do it better than Marvel Rivals and other companies. So the only way Blizzard can compete is by being a premium product instead of a product with a table flip every 6 months. In which case, Blizzard has to make this game the best version of the game instead of doing updates for the sake of updates, which is what I think will happen. I think Marvel Rivals will fail badly. I don't think it'll fail badly. I think the devs will be able to keep up a good production cycle of interesting content to keep adding and stuff like that. It's yet to be seen. I don't think it's going to fail. I think it's going to be a different type of game, personally. It'll be hyped for 3 months, and people will forget. Well, we don't have any evidence. We don't have any similar games within the region either. The reason why quite a lot of the MMO competitors against World of Warcraft failed was because they were incapable of getting enough hype around a consistent production schedule. And I think Blizzard with Overwatch is in the same category as the competitors for World of Warcraft were back then. They're not capable of getting enough hype around a consistent production schedule to get the eyes back on the game consistently enough to make it, I mean, just gain viewers like that. So really the game needs to be this like premium product with well balanced kind of like aspects to it. The best product it can be. in a stable state. And I think that's the thing. I want Overwatch to be in a stable state of good balance where everything's more or less playable, and therefore we have a lot of variety in the game, and big amounts of variety instead of like 1 week of one thing, 1 week of another thing is the best way to lead yourself to be like always. I mean, it's the best way to make somebody do 2,000 hours of playtime, isn't it? To have the biggest variety possible. I want Overwatch to not have hogging Kiriko meta for 1 season. Hold on, Ren. Hold on. Kiriko needs 7 seconds on that TP. Completely unplayable if it was 8. So shut up. Kiriko's fine as she is. Suzu having intangibility is fine. Don't worry about it. It's absolutely fine. 12 on Suzu. Yeah, Suzu is exactly as powerful as Lamp. And wall climb, yeah.
Your time. I said it routinely. I think some players forget some facts like this. Roll queue came out halfway through Overwatch 1's life cycle. People talk about Overwatch 1's history as if the game was 2.2.2, when half of its history didn't even include a feature that I personally think was required to enjoy the game at any level of play, and I consider...
You think you can't enjoy the game at any level of play without roll queue? Stop being so dramatic, come on. Come on.
The before times actually unplayable. And I don't care what video game donkey says about open queue, I think he's wrong.
How did this moronic system even...
I think that the most interesting part of Overwatch was the interaction between players on their teams. I think having more DPS in the game in general is kind of like worse for the game because DPS interact with the enemy team. I think the depth and the interesting stuff that comes from Overwatch in terms of strategy, all of the variation, that it just comes from the interplay between characters. And some people are going to feel like that's the boring part. Personally, I feel like DPS in general is very flat. Like no matter what DPS you play, you're shooting the enemy. That's what you're doing. There's very little peaks, very little valleys with that. Solo queue got a billion times better with Rollock. No, I agree. Solo queue got a billion times better, but the statement of it could not be enjoyed at any level of players. Like, come on.
To the first game, let alone make it all the way into Overwatch 2.
On the other hand, a lot of players hated roll queue for how it extended queue times for top players, even though I think it was required to at least make the most popular mode, quick play, actually function. This goes to show you, we will never please everyone with the decisions with this game. Too many competing interests at the same time. So for me, Overwatch 1 was
I always find he says things like that quite a lot when Freedo talks, like, we're never going to please everyone, therefore, question mark, action. He always says it to, like, hedge his statements and stuff like that.
Accidentally made a competitive...
The devs in Overwatch were World of Warcraft developers. They had no idea how to make a shooter. They had no idea how to make a hero shooter. They were laying the tracks. You know that that Tom and Jerry meme where they're on the train and they're just there putting down the tracks as they go, like flicking it down, the like toy train. Yeah, that's what Blizzard were the entire time. So like, it's not even an insult to say they were inept, because quite frankly, they were quite a lot of the time they were far behind on how the game should be made than the community, and not even how the game should be made, but how just the fundamental building blocks of the genre of hero-based shooter could be made. They were just behind.
Shooter and had no idea how to maintain or improve it. I used to insult them by saying Overwatch was Call of Duty for World of Warcraft fans, and the devs just wanted to make an RPG team comp builder instead of a shooter game. That's what 6v...
RPG team comp... No, the devs just wanted to make cool and interesting heroes. The devs had no idea what they were making. And the devs just honestly, they have a mind map, and the mind map has the character name in the middle and all of the aspects of the character around the outside. And then the individual departments get to all look at that board, go off and do their own thing. And then only once the character is 90% complete and nothing else can be changed, do they come back to the board and be like, oh yeah, we fucked that up. And they can't change it anyway because it's 90% done. So it's like, oh, we'll release it. And they just did that over and over and over again with every single hero. And that was one of the reasons why we got such beautiful diversity in Overwatch of the heroes. It's one of the reasons why the game has so much depth. The ability for each of the departments to work separately and perfect their part of the game is amazing. The fact that there weren't too many hands in the pie and too much oversight on each individual department, or at least it seems that way, is amazing. Like, that's why we got such a good game. But it led to this... And that's kind of like the start. Like, Blizzard thought they were making TF2, right? They thought it was TF2. They thought that they could keep adding new characters to fix any underlying issues. They thought a builder kind of like format of the game like TF2 has is possible for Overwatch. It turns out that it was just probably poor design space, since TF2 is specifically designed around the builder breaking of old playstyles. So 2CB was a complete failure, just because they didn't really know what they're doing. And the building kind of like genre that they were doing was a complete failure as well, because they didn't know why that worked in TF2. Overwatch failed because the devs weren't capable of being competitive. RPG team comp builder instead of a shooter game. What? RPG team comp builder instead of a shooter game? Overwatch was never a shooter game. Overwatch was always a hybrid of loads of different genres. So, like, I feel like this is just Freedo revealing his hand that he likes the shooter elements of Overwatch more than the rest of the elements of Overwatch. Like, was Overwatch ever just, like, not just, but was Overwatch ever a shooter game? Does he mean just like a competitive game in terms of like the esports? Because even then, I don't think designing characters for the esports is a good idea. I think they just screwed up multiple times and took a really slow approach to fix it when they did screw up the esport. Honestly, it's pretty trivially easy to do both at the same time. So yeah, I'm confused by it.
And I wish they leaned more into the shooter elements the entire time, which is why I wanted to limit the power of synergies and team comps with hero bans so early on. Ironically enough,
hero bans is an absolutely brain-dead idea. Freedo is so dumb. The moment you give people a hero bans, you know what they're going to do? So the high-level people are going to start banning certain things. The meta's going to form around the banning, and it's going to feed straight down through the community into the low levels, and they're going to ban the same characters regardless of whether it's good to ban them at their level. That's just what happens. The meta is not what is good at low level, it's what that's filtered down from high level. So essentially what you'll end up with high level players banning good picks on maps. They'll ban good characters, and yeah, it's also just a crutch so that Blizzard don't have to fix the broken characters. Yeah, okay, we'll release Mara into the game, but don't worry guys, you can ban him yourself if you don't want to play with him. It's not really like good. Like I can certainly imagine a world where a new character was released slightly good and every single game somebody banned it because they don't want to play with it because it's so good, and it strictly is a good choice to ban that character because if they don't ban that character you can play it and they can't. Like, the hero ban system is just broken. Like, you got 5v5 with one tank. People are just going to ban the tank they don't want to play against or they're worse against, or the best one for the map. And then every single map, we're banning the best tank. It just does not work on the face of it. I've never come up, or never heard anyone say anything cogent on hero ban systems in this game. It makes no sense whatsoever. I've been saying this since SVB first brought it up, and since Freedo first brought it up back in the day. It makes no sense.
The community of viewers at the time back then pushed back against us, no matter how polite we tried to be. They said we were being too harsh. They said that we're never satisfied with what Blizzard gave us. We asked for a team queue, so instead they gave us a basically useless group finder.
Group finder was not useless. Blizzard just has never given you any reason to group up in the game. In fact, it is actively detrimental to group up. It is bad to group up. You get longer queue times for a game. You get harder games because the other team's always going to have someone smurfing. And, like... oh god, yeah, Group Finder is just, it was a good system. It worked really well. Do you know what I did when Group Finder was first released? I put together a group of 5 other people with me, and I would invite them all to the group, and then every single time we lost the game, I'd boot the person that was responsible and get a new person in, and I'd just rotate the group until we won a load of games. You just cut the fat, you cut the trash, and just keep going. Yeah, Group Finder was good. It was really good. It's sad that it went, and it's sad that Overwatch has no reason to ever play with friends, because there's always going to be smurfing, there's always going to be other things happening, and you always have to bias the queue against the groups, because the groups are implied to have some sort of team play between them. The only way to have grouping content, or grouping be like actually valid in Overwatch, is to have a team-based SR for your group and some sort of clan system that was leaked at some point in the past, that Jeff... I think this was like 2020 that Jeff was thinking about doing a clan system. Jeff always said he wanted Overwatch to be a team-based game. Overwatch has never been a team-based game, ever. It just never has been. I'm just gonna even out my lighting. Yeah, Overwatch had never been a team-based game because they released a solo queue and didn't release a group ladder. What they should have had from the start if they wanted to build Overwatch League, guys, very simple. They should have had... They should have had a grouped ranked ladder where you had to like lock your team of like 10 people and you could play with them whenever, and it made a team-based SR. And they should have had a ladder based on the team-based SR that the people at the top of the ladder got invited to a tournament and had a path to pro. Right? That would be the most the most reasonable way to get people to play it and get people to enjoy it, etc, etc, etc. Overwatch is more fun in a group. They just never given us a reason to play it. Like, don't diss the group finder though. The group finder was a good tool with no reason to use it. It was a very
Turns out I'm actually just real, and people hate you if you don't mirror
we call it dumb over here, but you know,
their opinion, which I will never do, not for popularity, ever. I think a lot of what I just...
And fair enough, people have called you shill. You're upset about that. That's probably why the title's 66 is Overwatch is Flat Earth, because people are calling him a shill. I fully respect that Freedo is saying his truth, and he is saying exactly what he thinks. But you have to admit that Blizzard has put on some pressure to content creators to not talk about 66. There is pressure on the content creators. It's not direct pressure, it's implied pressure. Saying that Flats can't talk about it or ask questions about it when they do an interview with him is implied pressure for anyone that wants to work with Blizzard in the future to say, you know what, just don't do a big amount of stuff on this, or don't start arguing this, because we're not going to listen to you anyway. And let's be honest, if people want to get invited back to Blizzard HQ for the content creator meetups, then creating a big scene and going on about 5v5 or 6v6 definitely isn't the way to do that. So there is implied pressure. There is. But don't get me wrong, every single person, like, obviously, every single person can talk about it. Jake's talked about it, Sparta's talked about it. It's absolutely fine to talk about it, but there is a little bit of implied pressure that is maybe not the best thing to do to give it a full hearing, etc. I think Freedo can more or less agree with this. Not to say that Blizzard ever said to anyone to not do it, or blacklisted, or even shadow blacklisted, that sort of stuff. They just haven't. But there's still implied pressure that people shouldn't talk about it if they want to be in an active participation with a partnership with Blizzard in the future.
Said might be hard for you to believe if you entered Overwatch 2 or at the later stages of Overwatch 1, but there was an era where you got shame for criticizing Blizzard, and we, on purpose, did it anyway. But now it's gone the other direction, where it's a recipe to print views if you just complain about anything. And I think we all know why, because...
It's not. It is honestly not. And yeah, like, Overwatch has many more players that have played Overwatch and are no longer playing Overwatch than the players that are currently playing Overwatch. So if you make a style of content that speaks to the people that have quit Overwatch for a reason in the past, there's going to be a bigger audience for it, right? That it's very simple. Obviously there's a reason to do that, but in terms of like it printing money, it doesn't really print money. Like these videos get up to like a reasonable amount of views. I see some on 60k. Obviously my Overwatch is terrible hero videos have got up to like 120k, which is a reasonable amount of views, but it's not like you complain about Overwatch, you get 500,000 kind of thing, and you don't complain about Overwatch, you get 20k. It's like, it's all within the ballpark. So people are really honestly just saying the things they want to say.
We're more familiar with the sentiment now, which is tainted by the long list of controversies and mistakes they've made. With the lawsuits, misconduct by their CEO, they lied to our faces about developing a story mode, said it was coming, then made it seem like it was going to be as cool and deep and replayable as they told us in the previous announcements. Then, surprise, most of it is canceled, and they released actual garbage. A story mode that was so bad, I wouldn't want to play it if it was even free. I'm actually glad Microsoft fully canceled it, because what they pushed out was terrible to me. Archives minus. Shockingly bad in my
Blizzard are the biggest argument against people being able to work from home I've ever seen. Because they worked for 3 years from home and did nothing. They did nothing. Hey, Ogara.
The worst experience of its kind of any game I've ever played. I can't believe they actually charged any amount of money for it with how bad of quality it was. I remind you all about this now because as I sit here in front of you in 2024, the community sentiment has shifted to somehow think that it's even possible I'm a shill for Blizzard. Like I don't speak my mind about the game and instead am parroting talking points for them. And we'll cover this in a lot of the less offensive points made by this crowd, but this Illuminati conspiracy...
No, as I said, I'm fully giving that you're a stupid person. I have no problems with that. I don't think you're pretending to be stupid. I think you just are. That's cool.
Thinking is really getting out of hand with our community. I wish my history of giving my blood, sweat, and tears for this game and its community was enough to protect me from shill accusations, but apparently it's not. I spent years asking for things that Overwatch 2 finally did. That's why I have less to complain about these days.
Yeah, the 20 minutes of talking about why I'm upset about this discussion, and then the 10 minutes of discussing.
Unlike some of the flat earthers among the Overwatch scene, I don't commit the moving the goalpost fallacy. If I ask
you just want money, but this video hasn't done particularly well. 51k views. This isn't great. Like this is fine, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, and Freedo's a big content creator, he always has been. Like he kicked it off with Overwatch, but this style of thing has not attracted shitloads of people back to the, like, saying that anyone's in here for money is kind of like just weird to me, because I don't think anyone's getting that much money from it. You can get money from the style of ranting content, you can get money from complaining about Overwatch in a general sense, but mainly because it's just a very easy way to make content, and not mainly because like it's really popular and you'll just pop off to like ludicrous degrees if you just complain like
something and the devs address it, I'm happier about it, because failing to do so is intellectually dishonest. I don't just constantly go back to my pet theories and talking points that will, quote, save the game, which for me has always been hero bans and draft mode anyway. Both things I've given up on.
hero bans and draft mode are dumb ideas, and you're dumb for saying it.
Even though I truly think it's the real solution to many of the things people complain about, especially the things that people forget were problems in both formats, 5v5 and 6v6. Yet they lay it at the feet in Overwatch 2 as if it's exclusively a problem there. Not the case. Most of the problems slightly shift them. It's usually easier, not for me because I'm really
guys, remember when I was really impactful in the space? Guys, remember back then? Please guys, remember when Jeff Kaplan knew me?
But it's usually easier to write off really unfounded criticism. But that is also why we have to be careful to make sure that the things that we're telling the devs are accurate. If we as the community found our criticism based on lies and misrepresentation and confusion, the Overwatch...
See, this is why he's just like angling at the, oh yeah, well, everyone that has this opinion is kind of like just dumb or disingenuous and other stuff. He's not talking like, he's not arguing in an honest way in any sense here.
Overwatch 1 devs win because they believed we were all forum trolls and we should be ignored. Those old WoW devs basically hated their consumer base, felt they were above them. That's the vibes I got with Overwatch 1, and it's because they
I think they were exhausted by the consumer base more than anything. I don't think they hated them. I think, yeah, they thought they knew better, but honestly, the loudness of the internet, especially when you make a game like this, is so exhausting that you need specific people to be able to filter it for them. And let's be honest, like, when is Jeff ever gonna have the time to hear a honest, like, length of and people were learning Overwatch for like years, so people didn't really have any good takes on the game. So yeah, sure. Yeah, you just can't win with some people. Yeah, no, I get it. Like, I get why the devs weren't really interactive. It is true, you just kind of can't win with the player base. But it doesn't mean the player base is wrong, and it doesn't mean the player base shouldn't be listened to. It just means you have an uphill back. Like, you're gonna be Sisyphus. And you're gonna always be Sisyphus, and that's the good state of communication with the player base. It's fine. Just deal with being Sisyphus. That's your role. You're a dev that is beholden to the players of your game, otherwise they won't play it. You are Sisyphus, so just like take it and take the feedback and stuff like that. And yes, some of it's going to be wrong, some of it won't be, and it's your job to filter it. Like, we're not going to be able to do it for you. You need to filter out all the information that's coming at you.
Here in Overwatch 1, so how could they ever be wrong about anything? That was actually their vibe. One last thing about the culture of our game, and then I'll get to 6v6. Today, in 2024, I feel like we have entered the late stage of our game. We're all sick of their shit and demand results. And good, we should. Blizzard played fast and loose with the facts, and they did a giant rug pull and have made many dumbass mistakes that will take a long time for gamers to get over. That, and we all remember loving Overwatch 1. So many of us think we should just revert the game back to how it was, do a WoW classic. Here's the thing.
It's the, yeah, well, we should be giving them feedback, and it's good that we're giving them feedback, but you're being disingenuous on the feedback you're giving, and you really need to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit less dishonest in the feedback you're giving them when you talk about 6v6, because it's not that anything that you say is wrong, but you're wrong, right? You're wrong. It's not like
this reminds me
of the truth.
Seemingly for though I
because if it goes well for Blizzard, and they're like, yeah, 6v6 is great, Blizzard have to do 6v6, and if it goes badly and people are like 6v6 is bad, people will just say that wasn't a good enough test for 6v6, and there's nothing else you can say. The animated shorts added in are so cringe. Yeah, well, yeah, just using B
that it had at the time.
This is B-roll. The animated shorts are C-roll and D-roll.
Remember how bad it actually was, as opposed to...
Oh, I accept your proposal, Freedo.
Version of the game, if the top players think this is the best way to play competitive Overwatch, go for it. I'm not married to my own ideas here, guys. I never have been. But I guess there's no clout to be gained in our community if you're not extreme. I want hero bans. Still not gonna get it, it seems. I don't get the format I want. I think somehow instead, because so many others have been...
because the format you want is absolutely brain dead on the face of it.
Talking about this, I've been labeled in a false dichotomy in this situation as if I'm pro 5v5. I didn't ask for this format. What are you talking about? I just think it's better. As terrible as it is, I think 6v6 is just more pain and misery. Overwatch is a tough game to get everyone to agree. What I actually don't like, I'm not a fan of this at all, is the devs trying to reinvent the wheel over and over. I hate this boom-bust cycle of balance. I hate the inconsistency of this game. They're changing the entire rules of the game so fast that I find it impossible to improve or be consistent with my own gameplay, or even make consistent...
Freedo actually agrees with me on this. Yeah, I think Overwatch needs to be a good game instead of a game that changes rapidly, because I think the competition is going to just outcompete us on the speed that they can change and make things that are more interesting. I think Overwatch Overwatch needs to be a stable, good game at its core.
Consistent content about it. I want to go back to making epic-sized videos, and I think I still can, but the reality is if they change the game and the matchup so fundamentally every few months, how do I spend hundreds of hours making a single video and have it invalidated by the next patch? I'm really bored of them trying to overly transform the game over and over. I don't
Videos of Freedo made that are hundreds of hours.
like that, and I don't like that they seemingly listen to every single Timmy's opinion. Listening to everyone all at once makes this game lose focus and direction, where I'd prefer if they had a bit of the old dev energy, at least knowing what they want. So, I'm not against 6v6 because Blizzard told me to say it, a hilarious accusation to begin with. I'm against it because it would be a massive undertaking for the
I
dev.
still think Season 9 changes killed the game. The hitbox health changes are good, I think. The comp reset killed the game. The comp reset did do a load of disservice. Season 9 changes are kind of like a weird mixed bag. It completely changed the game. Like, Season 9 with bigger health pools and less one-shots is a completely different video game. It's possible it's a healthier video game for 5v5, but realistically it's not great, is it? I need one more light. Overwatch never recovered from the decision to prioritize Overwatch 2. You mean PvE? Yeah, of course it never recovered from PvE. Really need the light? No, well, I got my lighting sorted and it was like all balanced, and then the sun started going down because I was using natural light, which obviously is a mistake because I shouldn't be able to see natural light. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 lights. Season 9 changes. The core of the Season 9 changes is Overwatch genuinely is a very hard game to aim in. And that is something they can fix through repeatedly releasing characters that don't need to aim, but however, like, they have increased the amount of aiming you need to do in the game by reducing the amount of tanks in the game. So, like, they actually made it a lot harder to play this game at a casual level by going to 5v5, in my opinion, because there's less just bulk targets to shoot on main, and there's a lot more small targets to shoot, there's a lot less big targets to shoot, etc, etc. So then, the old problem of acceleration is instant and hitboxes are really jerky and you can't really, like, it's the hardest game to aim in that there is, came back in a big way. So they essentially had to lower the skill floor for a different way, which is increasing health pools, etc. It's all a bit of a wash because it's also mixed up together. You can't really say which bit was the nail in the coffin, but it's a different game than we had. 100% a different game. They wanted to nerf healing and they killed half the supports instead of targeting Batkiri and Anna to begin with. I'd say so, yeah. They could have done it in a very simple way, but again, they had a lot of goals. They wanted to make aiming easier. They wanted to make one-shots less prevalent because they thought that was a pain point. And personally, apart from Widow, I've never really seen anyone complaining about one-shots existing in the game and the health pools being low. I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone complain about that. Obviously, Widow's been a massive pain point for the game for a long time. Hog one-shots, yeah, true, Hog one-shots. But Hog one-shots still exist, so they didn't really fix that, did they? Because they took it out of the game. They put the trap in, took the one-shot out of the game, made it so you had to combo it with the trap, and then buffed Hook so you could kill people anyway, even if the trap wasn't there. Good job, Blizzard. Really good brain thinking there. Love that. Create Moira meta for 3 weeks. It's Hog OTD. Okay, let's keep going.
And I think would set us back years of development time to rework all of it.
You think it would take them years of development time? Like, I go here, 7HSKW, here's the patch notes, just do that. That's what I want. Actually, I want quite a lot of the change of reverted. I want the jank back in Overwatch. I want old Torbjorn back. I want a teleporter and a shield generator. I want the game to be hilariously unbalanced. And I feel like the only thing that killed the game in like the worst things in the game are auto-immunity, just like stop, you can't kill that abilities, and too much glue. And when I say glue, I mean too many reasons to group up and to like make it too hard to break apart that group. Essentially, Overwatch had the interesting part about the genre, and this is what Marvel Rivals have got straight wrong with the characters they've released so far. They don't have any glue. And when you don't have any glue whatsoever, any reason to group up, then you can't have the big, fun, breaking the group kind of thing, right? You don't have the clumping, and you don't have the throwing a fucking rock at it to break it. You don't have the Winston with a Zarya, and Winston with a Diva that breaks it in a big throw of resources. If there's no glue, what am I supposed to huff? Excellent. But yeah, no, this works, okay? Right in front of me, this works. It works fine. It's not perfect, but honestly, saying it's going to take a year when this is just common sense balancing with no reworks, to be clear, no work. This is numbers tweaks, little bits, maybe a little bit of coding here and there, but mostly just changing the numbers in the code. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. So saying it's going to take a year, yeah, sure, it'll probably take Blizzard a year to do that. And yes, we are talking about the smallest evil here, because let's be honest, we need Blizzard to produce stuff, and if they get mixed up for too long reinventing the wheel, then we've got issues. But well, I mean, Blizzard already spent 2 years reinventing the wheel of all the stuff they broke and went from the first client to the second client. So I don't know. I can't count on 2 hands the amount of things that have been removed from Overwatch and then re-implemented. Something rank system, armor. It's just kind of crazy. So yeah, I think that 5v5 fundamentally requires a lot more reworks, a lot more development time than 6v6 does. I think half the characters in the 5v5 cast, half of them need some sort of work. I'd say about a third of them need a full rework, and that's just too much. That's too much to ever expect. Zarya and D.Va, perfect example. When Overwatch 2 came about, we went to 5v5. Everyone knew the moment that they announced it that Zarya and D.Va were going to be issues. What work have they done on Zarya and D.Va in the past 2 years? Apart from making Zarya be able to bubble herself twice, what work have they done? And increasing DM slightly. They've done no work. They're boring characters. They're not made for 5v5, and they cannot do these reworks in a reasonable length of time. They gave D.Va a Porsche. So yeah, they can't do it. They can't rework these characters. They can't even rework 2 of the characters that were the biggest pain points for 5v5. They can't even rework Roadhog in a reasonable way. That was one of the biggest pain points for 6v6 and 5v5. They can't rework Orisa, who was the biggest pain point, in a healthy way. There's so many different heroes here. Like, I'm counting 4 just there that need a full rework to actually work in a healthy way in this game. So what are we talking about? Like, it's going to be more work for 6v6 just to do these, like, common sense balance that doesn't... They've done it in the workshop. It doesn't require that much time compared to, like, all of these characters. They need to be completely reworked. Like, and to be clear, Zarya and D.Va work in 6v6. Roadhog works so much better in 6v6 than he does in 5v5 because a complete lack and an absence of soft pressure from tanks when Roadhog is in play is awful. Roadhog as a character is a DPS character that kills or doesn't kill. He doesn't control space in a soft way, he controls space in a hard way, and that's less bad in 6v6 because you have another tank that will be controlling space in a soft way. God, Zarya is so fun for me in Overwatch 1, but I don't even feel like I can play her anymore. It's one of the reasons why I don't play tank. So the surprising amount of Zarya players in Mass is 4 and 3 when you go Winston they lose game. Yeah, I think there's so many characters that have just been left in the dust, and to say it requires less work to do 5v5 and 6v6 is just crazy to me.
Remember that whenever you think any format change, balance, addition is ever going to fix anything in this game. There's no fixing it. You can't fix it. Fixing it isn't the option. The only options you have is trade-offs here or trade-offs there. So rather than talk about fixing anything, we need to talk about trade-offs because that's how things work in reality. They have nuance, each decision with its own pros and cons. There isn't one good or one bad. Life is not that simple. The only position on this game I think is objectively correct is that we all have different opinions on what the best version of Overwatch is, and we will never agree. Not even the pros can agree, and certainly the casuals don't agree either. All it takes is a quick scroll through the comments section of any video talking about Overwatch to see how radically different all of the takes are. No camp of players actually agree, even if they seem like they do. Because even if they gave you guys 6v6, you wouldn't agree on how it should be balanced. There will always be complaints, as I hopefully will detail in the rest of this video, which is why I think the only global fix that even gets close to fixing anything is hero bans, because all the other solutions attempt to be one size fits all and don't apply equally to the different skill tiers and playstyle differences among the player base.
People will not apply it to their skill tier. They will do whatever the fuck the pros do because they're stupid in low tiers and just ban characters that are pain points or other things. And it just gives Blizzard a reason to not fix the characters that are pain points. It's not a good system. It doesn't solve any of the problems. Saying that, oh yeah, the low rank players can ban the characters that are bad in, like, or oppressive in low ranks. Will they fuck? Will they? Come on. They won't do that. They'll just ban whatever the high rank players are playing. What do you think they're gonna do? Do you think the stupid people are gonna suddenly start being smart and banning things that are actually an issue? Or they will sometimes, but half the time they won't. Half the time it won't do anything apart from make it so that certain players have even less choice over what they play because the one character they wanted to play is banned. And personally, you know what? If I joined into a game I wanted to play Winston and you banned Winston, I'd leave the game and go play Valorant instead. I'd just do that because I just want to, you know, I turn on Overwatch because I want to play a hero. That's what I do. That's what everyone does. That's what the revealed, as Jake say, the revealed habits of the players, the revealed preferences of the players actually says. that people just want to play the character they want to, and putting roadblocks in the way of that is just awful. It's not a solution. You can't. I think that's just fundamentally a non-starter. Just saying we need more roadblocks in the way of people playing the thing they want to play. I don't think it's a good solution to anything.
Whereas at least hero bans, you'll get some effect on the meta locally in your own game, individually, no matter what area of the game you play. Pro level, gold level, doesn't matter. But we don't have time for actual useful solutions. We have to debate Flat Earth today. One of my favorite documentaries that I've ever seen is called Beyond the Curve, and it goes over the Flat Earth movement, why people believe it, how it started and got more popular over time. Now, while in the documentary, there's a few jabs at the expense of these misguided folks. Overall, it has a climax message that says we should be trying to invite these people in and have a real conversation with them, which I thought was heartwarming and inspiring, and certainly something I aspire to do, but struggle because I am also a toxic, rage-filled gamer like the rest of you. That being said, a lot of the arguments and certainty that people bring to the 6v6, 5v5 debate are as unfounded and easily disproven as statements made by Flat Earth. What the documentary...
Oh, so it's both. First off, you're conspiratorial and think that I'm a shill and therefore you're flat earther, and second off, you don't fucking listen to science, and you don't even interact with the arguments, and you know what? You never change your mind anyway. Therefore, you're piss off.
Is that people get invested into the tribalism and belonging of it. They fall in love with the ideas of what it represents.
No, people do believe the Earth is flat random. You just don't know any.
Decision is that there isn't flights going into the southern hemisphere. And then the chick pops on and says, this isn't a difficult test to run. Oh, look, there is that right there. So it gets confusing. How is it possible for people to discount evidence that's right in front of them? Turns out with human psychology, it's very easy, in fact. And it's a very human thing to do, to be misguided by your emotions. We all do it, myself included. By the end of the documentary, they run a test where
this is just random ad hominem. This isn't an interesting framing for a discussion about 6v6 versus 5v5. This is just saying that your arguments are wrong without evidence. If you're gonna show me a situation where people, yeah, he's just literally yapping, isn't he? He just how does, like, because clearly, like, this is scripted, right? This video. You think he's wrote a full script for it? I think he's wrote a full script for it. So how do you write that full script and not cut out the entire section, like the page you've written of just words that don't advance a discussion or do anything interesting?
And they correctly point out that if the test is to work and the Earth is rounded, then the guy
content review's going well
at the origin of the light source will have to raise the light above his head to account for the curve of it.
Which one? It's been 15 minutes and you haven't talked about any of them.
Know the game so well they can.
I just love the amount of ad hominems you can get into, like, the smallest amount of space. He's just like, yeah, ego, pid, dumb, they're flat earthers, they don't listen to anyone, that's very easy to prove their arguments. Hopefully at some point we get from talking about flat earthers to actually talking about the arguments that he thinks he can disprove in a sentence. Nails and titles have a disconnect from what he actually, like, the tone he has in the video, and I think people get the wrong idea from the thumbnails. It's because obviously Coach Mills is a content creator, and essentially I haven't watched the Samito video, but I've talked to Coach Mills. Coach Mills does SVB and he does Samito. So SVB says, I want, like, creative design over this. I want to, like, know what the videos are going to be. I want to, like, be fully looped in and decide what style of, like, presentation you're putting on my videos. Sam just says, fuck it, do whatever you want, dude. That's basically Sam's reaction to content creation with Coach Mills. And you know what he does? And he does reasonably well, and he has reaction takes on every single one. He has titles. He isn't doing SVB anymore. But that's what he said about SVB back in the day. He wanted a little bit more basically interaction and looping into how the videos are made. And he was a bit more wary of clickbait and other stuff like that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody trying to make money by letting the person making the videos for them, titling the videos for them, thumbnailing the videos for them, to do whatever the hell they want in order to get the clicks. As long as you're being honest and you're not being inflammatory in your process, I don't see any issues. Like, just talk about his arguments, don't talk about thumbnails. I'm a shill because Sam says that those who disagree are shills. So not a huge fan of that. Not a huge fan of the us versus them psychology he uses in the marketing of his... I hate it when... Oh, Freedo, why don't you go clutch your pearls a bit more? Jesus Christ. Oh, I hate it when we're a community. No, we're not. Yeah, you're doing the same thing. You just called everyone flat earthers. No, you're not. You just, yeah, one rule for me, one rule for you, etc. Not, come on.
videos. This is what they think about your opinions. Like, come on, man. You're causing this to be a tribalistic thing when we're all in the same boat together. So not happy about how my nephew's conducting himself, but we're in family here in Overwatch. I love the guy anyway. I hope he leans back on that, and I look forward to him addressing the long list of criticisms I have against his arguments. Sam is an expert
Which we will get to in about 40 minutes.
Overwatch, and that's part of the problem, in fact. Too much confidence in your own ability to play the game loses perspective on your ability to know how the design of the game affects the rest of the world beyond you. It biases you, and that lack of perspective causes...
It can bias you. Do you see the difference there, Freedo? It can bias you. You have to be careful of the bias it gives you. It doesn't bias you being good at the game. It can bias you if you're not, if you're not like introspective enough.
Is a painful amount of Dunning-Kruger effect. We have a big community of content creators that do not understand the ramifications of design decisions and yet think they have all of the answers about design decisions. We're not designers, guys. We should listen to the designers and have a dialogue with them instead of preaching.
Fuck off, should we? No, we're not listening to the Blizzard designers. Why are we listening to the Blizzard designers? They have historically had no fucking idea what they're doing. What? Why should we? Yeah, we should have discussion with them, 100%. But that doesn't mean they know better than the rest of the community. Obviously, they, on average, probably know a little bit more than the rest of the community, but that doesn't mean individual people in the community aren't better at designing the game than they would be in terms of the ideas around how the game should be structured. It's not like we need to, like, just carte blanche, just, I don't know, just kowtow to what they want. Like, come on.
To them things we don't actually understand. And when we provide evidence, let's like be beholden to that instead of dream up that we can have different evidence, which I'm seeing everywhere. Anyone who is sympathetic to the 6v6 cause so far dreams up that there could be evidence that has never materialized in real life. Okay, with that being said, and with
you just keep saying it. You can't just keep saying that we are unrealistic and that our arguments do not make sense for 20 minutes over and over and over again. Like,
love in my heart.
Jesus Christ, this could have been a 10-minute video.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope to go through the best arguments, things that I will not be arguing with
and
at
now
all.
That this short intro is over,
let's Steelman 6v6. What is the best aspects about it?
Was that the Undertale intro sound?
The game certainly had a higher...
The introduction has ended! Yes! We've made it through the introduction, guys! 17 minutes and 27 seconds. Good.
High-end skill ceiling. There was more to track, more going on, more chaos, more complexity, more...
This is the best 6v6 arguments.
Experience, more abilities, and bigger moments, bigger setups. Fat shatters, huge blades, and a tank battle that had ebb and flow to the game. The strategy of how you took positions with your tanks and how they interacted was far deeper than it ever could be with single tank. So if you really enjoyed the MOBA repositioning battle of getting your team...
Jesus Christ, that's like 16 different points in one there. Why are there so many points there? Okay, so let's go for it.
Specs about it.
So higher skill ceiling.
The game certainly had a high-end skill ceiling. There was more
high-end skill ceiling.
To track, more going on, more chaos, more complexity, more variance, more abilities, and bigger moments, bigger setups.
Bigger moments, bigger setups is the gameplay feel, not the skill ceiling.
Fat shatters, huge blades, and a tank battle that had...
Huge blades, fat shatters, that's the more players being better at their AoE abilities.
Flow to the game. The
tank had flow to the game. How is that anything to do with how does this man write his script?
Strategy of how you took positions with your tanks and how they...
Positioning.
They interacted was far deeper than it ever could be with single tank. So if you...
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Because, like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, you can't just, like, say 16 different things.
Specs about it.
Right, let's put this on, put it on right screen. Sorry, just putting on a capture for the notepad window. Right, so,
the game certainly had a high-end
skill. Okay.
Bigger set.
Okay, so bigger moments. AoE is fun. Hitting more people is fun. So he seemed. See, this is how you diminish other people's arguments while still addressing them, right? You list them off in a very fast thing in a category that doesn't even cover it. While just like rattling through them all. You don't give them the time to breathe. You don't give them the time for people to consider it. You do, like, this is dishonest argument.
Fat shatters, huge blades, and a tank battle that had ebb and flow to the...
Tank battle has ebb and flow. So he outright admits there is no meaningful front line trade now. So he's given it. Right, there is no meaningful frontline trade. That's from Freedo. Positioning, I think that's a higher end skill ceiling, right? This sentence there.
Tank. So
okay, so he's MOBA elements, more impact full.
If you look to the Overwatch League, the teams that went the farthest were the ones that had the best tank synergy.
By the way, since Overwatch has been launched, I've always said every single time somebody talks about the MOBA elements taking over the game, they're just blabbing and have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Because the trouble with the game isn't normally the MOBA elements, it's the individual abilities being way too strong.
Usually, or entire team synergy around their tank play. The tanks were the superstars and did most of the
Okay, so thanks for stars. Is it hard?
heavy lifting throughout the history of 6v6. Conversely, at the highest levels in Overwatch 2,
I feel like that was an argument against 6v6 there, that the tanks were superstars.
while we didn't have the Overwatch League for too long, tank gameplay instead became about flexibility, where the Florida Mayhem, I think, won the tank a lot.
Why is he talking about non-arguments for 6v6? Like, what is this section? Tanks now about flexibility. I'd call that, you're not allowed to play the thing you want to play, but I mean, each to our own, sure.
Because their star player, someone could play lots of the tanks.
Yeah, so you now have to play every single tank to be viable at higher ranks. I think you now have to play 2 or 3 tanks in order to be viable at medium rank as well, but, you know, like, something counter swapping, etc.
We didn't really have
Poorly balanced. What?
a star player, someone could play lots of the tanks.
Is that Zelda? Poorly balanced? Why are we talking about the balance of the game? What?
We didn't really have enough time either with roll queue or with competent balance to know what it could potentially be. So there is a mystery of what the peak Overwatch balance could be within 6v6, especially with a lot of the new and interesting designs that we got with Overwatch 2, with some of the more oppressive metas that a lot of
So he's giving us he's very kindly giving us all of this ground of the theoretically there might be a better way of playing Overwatch. Like, come on, dude. Of course, like, this is where we start. This isn't an argument for 6v6. That there is a theoretical better Overwatch available for 5v5 and 6v6. Why are we even talking about the balance right now? The balance isn't impactful. If you're talking about the balance could have been better in 6v6, therefore there's no reason to believe that there wouldn't be enough tanks to fill out the queues, we can talk about this. But this right here is not an argument, either pro or con.
people didn't like get countered by Ramatra or Queen cleaving through all of the tank picks with an anti-heal style ultimate. With a lot of the tanks being more interesting in the Overwatch 2 design, a lot of players are optimistic that they would be fun in 6v6.
They are fun in 6v6. It is outright admitted that they are fun in 6v6. Being able to cleave more people with tank abilities that are generally AoE abilities is more fun. Having more people on main is more fun than the alternative in 5v5. Having more people to shoot, having that shooting of that people being more impactful because the individual tanks are smaller and can theoretically die, and shooting them stops them doing things instead of shooting them grinds them down at overtime in order to make it so they eventually stop doing stuff once their health bar reaches the end of their armor. And if you don't shoot them, they will just like melt you, right? They'll just do whatever they want. In 5v5, we have this massive tank with 1 health bar that has to be chucked at you in a thing, and if you don't shoot him, he can chuck it at you and murder you. In 6v6, we have a smaller tank with an extension to their health bar in DM and Bubble, so that they can be chucked at you with full resources, and basically that 1 second or 2 second immunity isn't something you can take away from them. So they're easy to blow up if the communication and the organization isn't there. And even if the organization of the Bubble and the DM is actually there, sometimes it is actually good for you to make the Diva or the Zarya Bubble or DM the tank, right? There was this complex trade. There is no complex trade now. It's now just boring.
As the tanks they added there were Shield Body or a bit over the top. Orisa, Sig, Wrecking Ball don't really have the shooter gameplay loop that we know from Ramatra, Queen, and Mauga. I also think
Orisa, Sig, and Wrecking Ball don't have the shooter gameplay loop. Do you mean old ones?
Wouldn't be difficult for any group of creators to balance 6v6, even with the new heroes, better than the devs ever did in Overwatch 1. That's an easy sell to make to me. I also think it's obvious that the team fights are more stable and the engagements with each individual player are more reasonable because the stat differential between different...
Fair enough. I'm glad that you're giving me that. More stable individual engage, more reasonable. You know, you don't want to expand on what you mean by that, because obviously this is giving me half of the ground, because the team fights being more stable is a very good thing that reduces the amount of chaos in the game and makes it a lot more readable for low-level players to actually play.
Definitely true. 5v5 gameplay is intentionally more simple, so we should expect high-level tank gameplay to be less complex in 5v5 than it is in 6v6. These are all true statements. I think Hawk explains it actually very well. He says that in 5v clear, obvious right decision, and your ability to outplay the enemy tank is lower. I agree completely.
So basically, I fully agree that the tank experience is terrible. Is that what he's saying? Right? He fully agrees that the tank experience is absolutely terrible at the moment. Just awful. Like the fact that you're out in front and you're the beat shield for everything, and you have no ability to outplay anyone, and you're just there to exist, etc. Like, it seems like you're just giving it. Hi, Noxu. How you doing, dude?
Especially since all tanks have knockback resist.
That's what the size of the video in the white box. You don't want to stare at a white box. It's more interesting to you, is it?
There's very little tank exchange with one tank moving the other out of the way. Like, yes, we've got reworked Rhine for Overwatch 2, who can pin you off the map, which is kind of annoying, to be honest. But there's less of, like, hammer swinging the Rhine out of the way to physically make space for your team out of a choke, or counter diving as Winston onto the enemy Winston to boop him towards your team.
Yep, knockback reduction makes for less interactions. The game is at its best when simple characters interact in complicated ways, not when characters have passives that completely remove all interaction with certain abilities with them, just because they cannot have that interaction because the format's been changed to a worse format.
There's just less of a physical space battle because both tanks are made to be more immune to knockback, and they kind of can stun each other or counter each other's mechanics, but there's not an in-depth positional exchange going on. In fact, a lot of those responsibilities go onto the squishy role instead in a more FPS mindset. Overwatch
4 p.m. BST tomorrow. Noxy.
2 5v5 when you battle for map control is far more about getting angles with your shooter kit as opposed to your tanks forcing your way through to make space. But
This
unfortunately,
is fun and engaging gameplay, by the way. This is
that's where I'm going to have to stop praising go back to 6v6. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the knockout arguments that I think make it clear that we can't do it.
That was it. So what we got here? Higher end skill ceiling, bigger moments, AoE is fun, hitting more people is fun, tank battle has ebb and flow, there's no mean frontline trade now, mobile elements more impactful. I don't know why he was talking about mobile elements. He's just saying if you like the mobile elements, they are more impactful. Tanks are superstars, tanks have now were superstars. Tanks now about flexibility, team fights more stable, individual engagements more reasonable. I fully agree that the tank experience is terrible. It's pretty much the take there. Not that reduction makes less interactions. Okay. Cool. Let's see what his Q times argument is. Right. So the Q time argument for anyone that's new to this is that there is no reasonable reason to suggest that people don't want to queue for tank in a broad sense. I don't think there is. I think there's a reasonable argument to be made that tank has historically and currently been absolutely shafted in terms of the enjoyability of the role in a way that was not necessary and was not related to them being less or more powerful. I think tanks have so from the outset we had Ryan Diva, Zarya, and Winston with Roadhog. Roadhog's been a thorn in the side of tanks for ages in that they have basically no tank duo when the Roadhog's in play. Yeah, it did increase numbers by getting the DPS into the queues, but did it reduce the numbers by people not wanting to play with the Roadhog? It's a question that's like going through the ages. The biggest scaler that I think should exist on whether people want to play each one of the roles is the amount of heroes in the role. Tank has historically always had less heroes. The initiators in particular have had 4 options, as opposed to DPS having about 16 options. So no shit, people want to play DPS a bit more. Makes complete sense to me. Now the tanks have a much wider pool, so the variety's there, and you can actually play like different heroes. You can't play what you want, but in 6v6 you would be able to play what you want. So I say there's less of a reason why people wouldn't want to play tank in that regard. Anything else I'm missing here? I don't think there's anything else. I think that there's a couple other things here. Tiny Brain is tired? Yeah, I mean, the whole argument that that Roll Q was released at the same time as Sigma, and we essentially had priority passes forcing DPS players onto Roadhog so they could stomp the lobby that nobody enjoyed, so people didn't want to play tank against or with Roadhog, because playing against Roadhog was essentially an instant death if you ever got hooked, because there was counterplay against it, but it was just incredibly boring to play against, and it was more hated on the tank because tanks were at the front line and easy to hit, etc, etc, and you're reliant on somebody else to bail you out in that regard if you do actually get hooked. So that reduced the quality of play. And when you weren't playing with or against a Roadhog, because all the DPS were moonlighting in the tank role for priority passes, then you got to play double shield, which was possibly the worst gameplay experience I think I've ever seen. Possibly the worst gameplay experience I think I've ever seen. When people on King's Row are playing double shield instead of Reinhardt, you know you fucked up your game. When a poke comp that exists, or should exist, from good stable terrain and need a dive comp in order to break it, can be played on a flat fucking path on King's Row 2nd, then you screwed your game. Absolutely screwed it. And there's no reason to believe that this was hard to fix, or difficult to fix, or will reoccur. I don't see a single reason. Orisa D.Va on King's Row. Orisa D.Va is the most degenerate comp I think I've ever seen. The only reason D.Va's in there is to chuck out a load of damage, be survivable, and to make it so that DM can cancel out any pressure into them. It is so degenerate. If there's ever a scenario where Zarya or D.Va is good while played with without characters they can aggressively give their resources to, then essentially you've just screwed your game. D.Va was just too good. D.Va was historically just too good. She did too much damage. Like, there was a reason why everyone played D.Va instead of Zarya. She had too much mobility. She did too much damage. She was just strictly better than Zarya in the majority of scenarios. Okay, let's go. So Q times.
I see a lot of commenters as well as creators that seem to be confused about what the math of Q times represents. In the original 6v6 debate, Jake tried to explain revealed versus stated preferences. This is, human beings often say they'll do one thing.
I was talking about this. Yes, the revealed preferences are people don't want to play a role that is absolutely dumpstered. Just completely ruined in the variety, the flexibility, the ability to play what you want, the ability to actually enjoy the experience, the ability to not be hated on by other players. Yes, and I have every belief that the tank player base is currently decreasing as well.
But then do another. So it really doesn't matter how many people we line up to.
Yeah, when people play MMOs, they don't really want to play tank. Therefore, people really don't want to play tank in general because, yeah, they don't want to play it, so we should have less. No, it's a different game. It's a different video game. You cannot just use the fact that the tank category is bigger as well. Like pretty much the similarities between tanks are that they're bigger and for the most part they have softer pressure. These are the only similarities between Overwatch tanks and MMO tanks, and they're more or less more likely to be the tip of the spear. Like, people don't want the responsibility. Okay, we'll make it so that one person has the responsibility all on themselves. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Say they liked two tanks? What really
people like to be a cog in the machine. People like to be the Zarya, and people do like the initiating, but only if there's variety in the ways that you can initiate.
Matters is, did they line up to play?
Having Winston, Reinhardt, Bull, and Orisa as the only initiators was a terrible amount of variety for Overwatch 1. You can't say there was variety in that, and people would want to play it because they can play a different. Like, you play Overwatch for a week and you play initiator or main tank, unless you really click with Reinhardt, people just quit. They didn't want to play it because there was no variety in the game.
Yet. And the truth is, no matter what the format, no matter what the balance state, the only time players have been interested in playing tanks is in two times. When they've been broken and new in 5v5 when we first released Junker Queen, or around the mythical October patch, which we'll talk about that in a moment. I hear a lot of players say that free-to-play surely is going
We get to talk about the October patch. Woo!
to help this issue, because more players means more players queuing in the different roles, right? Fortunately, this isn't how math works, because the queue times are...
No, yeah, it is a dumb argument. You have to balance the queue times to everything. Getting a load more players in gets the reveal preferences of the players when they first join the game, which is essentially they're going to play the role with the most amount of heroes, or they're probably going to play DPS because it's most similar to other games that they play. They're probably not going to play tank. They will play support because there's a good big player base of players that like playing support. So yeah, people aren't going to play tank when they first flock to the game with new things. I don't think that's difficult. It's hard. I mean, it's a bad argument because just getting more players in, we have to change the actual feel and the idea of what the role is. And I think the extra variety and stuff like that is good enough by far. I don't think there's any reason to believe it isn't. But yeah, I do agree with him. The argument of, just getting new players and the tank queues are leaving out is stupid because, you know what, there has to be people to fill out the tank role. Do you think 6v6 no role lock is a debatable topic? I don't think no role lock 6v6 is something that's even slightly possible. I don't think it's a debatable topic, no. I don't think... I think that's just... That's essentially getting another... well, it's splitting the vote, isn't it? It's making it so that there's more things to talk about, when really, if we just like harp on 6v6, we'll get it eventually. I guarantee we'll get it.
Representative of the ratio between the different roles at that given rank. So quick play queues are way better in 5v5, like instant for everybody, because the range and how they're able to queue you up and match you up is more flexible. With the role delta thing, they mostly pin the tanks against each other, I believe, and then everybody else can be kind of sorted out, so it's even a multitude better. Whereas in most eras of Overwatch 1, quick play queue times for damage were bad. You needed to have a flex queue pass to even get damage. I used to edit videos while queuing for damage for 10 minutes in quick play. And this is any single meta unreliant. And oftentimes the more casual players don't even play the most broken, unbalanced characters to begin with.
Unrelated if you just put cinematics in the background.
So having a bigger player base doesn't help the tank queue problem, because what matters is proportionality. And in ranked, that's always going to be worse, because they limit who's going to join into the match based on the ranked thresholds they're willing to put into one. Which, if you want a fair match, you also want that. This is how we got it to be the point where a lot of top ranking DPS players didn't want to sit and watch Gordon Ramsay in queue all day, and a lot of players left our game because of that.
I have a 6-minute queue like every single night that I queue, like right now. It's not like Overwatch isn't currently as bad as, and it is better at peak times. I agree, it's better at peak times, but but in the non-peak times is worse, which is kind of a weird thing, because you'd expect the non-peak players to be the more hardcore committed players. So maybe that's evidence that the more hardcore committed players that are playing at all times of the day and not just at the peak times are more likely to avoid the tank role because they played more of it and they don't want to play it. Maybe the players that just moonlight for a couple of hours into Overwatch like 5 times a week, or maybe they'll play it 3 times a week at peak times. Maybe those are the players that are still willing to play it.
Having bad queue times makes it worse, because it alienates new players from even getting in to attempt it. But okay, Freedo, what about the most ideal, pristine balance state? The October patch, the best balanced Overwatch 1.
Oh, we got the seagull video. Yes, it was good, because it was the first time people have actually been able to play role lock with a variety of things. And lo and behold, when you increase the variety, despite the fact that the tank role still had very low variety in the heroes that were in the role, it had 4 and 4, it had 4 off tanks, 4 main tanks. The queue times balanced out. I know, it's crazy. It's crazy when you're allowed to play the thing you want to play, people want to play the role. It's weird.
Ever saw. I want to poke a few holes in this and then make some pretty obvious points about the player population this is even representing. The October patch was a breath of fresh air after a long overdue balance problem with double shield. They sort of just threw their hands up in the air and nerfed double shield. So Winston, Reinhardt, and other tank comps began to be played, and everything was glorious. But I think it's very important to note that that patch happened after Overwatch League was already done. The professional players were kind of ruining the meta balancing of the game in a way, because they would grind the game so hard and min-max to such a severe degree that everybody would learn what the most broken things on the patch were and emulate that. And any time when those players were off and not grinding ranked, the meta copycatting got way less severe, which I think is an underrepresented help to that patch.
Okay, so what is he saying is that the patch wasn't actually that balanced, and the patch was would have been solved by pros if pros were playing, and therefore the patch would have got worse. Is that what you're saying?
Players were very happy for characters like Baptiste and Orisa to be at the bottom of the tier list, but there's a sizable unspoken minority who were not happy with that change, and we might choose, us top players in consensus.
Yeah, and there's a sizable unspoken minority of people that quit Overwatch because 5v5 is worse, that don't talk anywhere, etc., etc. You can say that about anything. It's not really an argument.
Making content together with similar views that these players should be ignored. But they do exist. Players that wanted to play Orisa, but not feel punished by being required to have a perfect ideal team comp to function. This was part of the
play Orisa and sound on point. Orisa was poorly balanced because they just removed the shield essentially and made it so you weren't rooted. They really should have given us something else into a kit, but
6v6 design.
Whatever. Like, you need a little bit more work on Orisa's kit. And it's so weird the way he talks, because he like talks about the October patch, and he's like, the October patch was not as good as you think. For instance, Orisa could not see play, and that was bad. I'm like, okay, well, that's a balancing problem. That's not the point of the October patch. Is it as a proof of concept that in a stable state where everything can see play in a reasonable way before people solve the meta? And yeah, obviously once people solve the meta, less things are going to see play because people work out what's actually good. But there is a way to balance it, and it's really not that fucking hard that we can have the tank queue filled. Like, it's not that hard.
That a lot of players forget about. Characters were much more interconnected and required to run together, whereas 5v5 they've kind of balanced it in a way where
not Iron versus Freedo. I'm gonna lose that one somehow. I wouldn't be able to do literally anything to argue against Freedo. You say what you want about Freedo, he's quite a convincing speaker when he's speaking He's quite good at speaking over you and waffling.
You mostly can vaguely do any of the
And that is a
given
debate strategy.
job that you need, and you don't necessarily have to have one version of a thing to function with another thing. And as they add more heroes, more overlap, more variety, as well as make the game more self-sufficient when you have self-healing passive and things like that, they're really trying to get away from that interconnectivity of the characters required to function together. That's
What? What the fuck are you on about? Did that have anything to do with the October patch?
part of Overwatch a lot of players hated, and something that top-ranked players tend to forget because they've mastered those synergies and fit into it quite nicely. Now, the most important hole that we're going to poke into the glorious October patch is pro 6v6 proponents shout from a mountaintop that it had balanced queue times. Queue times were great.
No, we need to go back over this because I don't even know what he's talking about.
Overwatch League was already done. The professional players were kind of ruining the meta balancing of the game in a way because they would grind the game so hard and min-max to such a severe degree that everybody would learn what the most broken things on the patch were and emulate that. And any time
the balancing and the variety of play is gonna reduce over time because people are gonna work out what the patch is. I get that as an argument. It doesn't invalidate the fact that when the variety of play was high, people were playing tank. That was kind of like the point.
when those players were off and not grinding ranked, the meta copycatting got way less severe, which I think is an underrepresented help to that patch. Players were very happy for characters like Baptiste and Orisa to be at the bottom of the tier list, but there's a sizable
Players were very happy for them to be at the bottom of the tier list because that opened up space for other characters and other strategies to see play, whereas before they weren't. It wasn't and they shouldn't have been unplayable. Double shield should have been a thing that was theoretically possible if you played it properly, with split angles in good areas and that sort of stuff. But we never got to see that because all we did was open up the playing space to dive and to brawl again, so that it was an actually reasonably, not well, but reasonably balanced game. And yeah, people are happy that they're being removed. Of course they're happy that the characters that are ruining the game were removed. And yeah, of course people that are playing the characters that are ruining the game were unhappy. Doesn't mean they couldn't have been re-implemented in a healthy way or buffed to a healthy level without being overpowered.
spoken minority who were not happy with that
We're
change.
not just saying, fuck Baptiste, he can't be theoretically possible to be played ever. We're just saying, thank God the reign of Baptiste doing AoE healing in a stack of 6 people is gone.
And we might choose, us top players in consensus making content together with similar views, that these players should be ignored. But they do exist. Players that
The players that wanted to stack as a 6 with double shield should be ignored because they are dumb, and that is a very poor gameplay experience for the 90% of other players. They should 100% be ignored. If you think double shield was a healthy strategy and that you liked standing behind double shield, right-clicking the team to AoE heal them for 100% of the healing that you hit on the first person, and press shift when they jump into you so that nothing can displace you, you are stupid and you shouldn't be able to play this game. Like, what?
wanted to play Orisa, but not feel punished by being required to have a perfect ideal team comp to function.
And then we start talking about Orisa not being able to see play because you need a perfect ideal team comp.
This was
Like,
part of
what?
the 6v6 design that a lot of players forget about. Characters were
What? Like, how does that dovetail in any way, shape, or form? He just continuously one long run on sentence for hours.
restricted and required to run together, whereas 5v5, they've kind of balanced it in a way.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? You say counter swapping isn't as much of an issue as you think. I say, yes, that's true. The reason why counter swapping is an issue is because the tank cannot do anything about it, right? The individual tank gets a lot of damage picked against them. If you're on RAM, you get a load of stuff picked against you and they're stopping you doing anything. You can't do anything about it. It's a shit experience for the tank. Doesn't in particular reduce your win rate, and it's probably quite dumb to reduce your win rate, to do that in order to try and counter you. But it does ruin your experience. 100% ruins your experience. They wanted the video only has 50k views. It's boring as fuck. Yeah, I think the problem is it's not got topics. It looks like it's got topics, but really he's just wrote like a 20-page script and just read it in like one sitting. So you say counter swapping is not as much of an issue as it was. I say, yeah, that's true. Counter swapping isn't as much of an issue, but if people think it's an issue, it's an issue. And then I respond with, well, you say having to pick the correct characters in 6v6 to have synergy is an issue. And I say, Well, it's not as much of an issue as you think. It's not as much of an issue as you think, for the express reason that it's just low-level players copying high-level players. And quite a lot of the win rate you got by playing the correct characters together in 6v6 at low level when you weren't playing them properly, even if they were correct, was just because those particular players that you got on your team were happy to work together, so they swapped to the meta comp. So the people with the meta comp have this confirmation bias where they swap to the meta comp, and on the games where people are playing nice and playing around each other and probably timing themselves better and probably playing better, people are more likely to actually... Ralph is becoming Freedo with the amount of yaps. Yeah,
way where you mostly can vaguely do any of the given job that you need, and you don't necessarily have to have one version of a thing to function with another thing. And as they add more heroes, more overlap, more variety, as well as make the game more self-sufficient when you have self-healing passive and things like that, they're really trying to get away from that interconnectivity of the characters required to function together.
They don't require to function together. In fact, it's not even that impactful if you're not doing it properly. Okay, so there's 3 things in Overwatch that can scale, okay? In terms of skill and value. 3 things that can scale. 1 is positioning. That scales really well. 1 is mechanical skill and execution. That scales really well in terms of value and skill, floor and ceiling. And then the 3rd thing that doesn't scale really well is timing. And if you had bad timing, and the thing with timing is timing scales with level. Because as you get into a higher level, do you know what happens? You get better timing because you work together. So these synergistic comps, the positioning and the timing scales really well with rank, so that in the low ranks it didn't actually matter at all whether you picked the correct comp. It was all just, for the most part, confirmation bias. Like, I'd say at least a third or a half of it was confirmation bias, and then the rest was people just throwing when they got comps that didn't work together at a low rank. It just didn't matter at a low rank. So you saying that you were and him arguing that you were fully tied to a comp in 6v6 is just kind of wrong, because the actual synergy within the comp scale with your skill level in a real way.
That's part of Overwatch a lot of players hated, and something that top ranked players tend to forget.
A lot of players hated, also known as I hate it, and therefore a lot of players hated it.
Because they've mastered those synergies and fit into it quite nicely. Now, the most
mastered those synergies. Also, almost as if the synergy stuff don't matter for low rank players.
Important hole that we're going to poke into the glorious October patch is pro 6v6 proponents shout from a mountaintop that it had balance.
Okay, so I kind of think I got through his arguments, but that was just kind of like 2 completely separate topics dovetailed together. Like half of that wasn't even related to the Overwatch patch, the October patch. So no idea. Like, he's just off the cuff riffing on whatever that comes into his brain by the looks of it.
Queue times were great in that one fateful month in October, but they're really doing their
They were great.
Argument and disservice when they don't acknowledge that there's a caveat to that. It was great for the top 3%. This is the area of the player base where balance matters the most.
Was it just great for the top 3%? Or was that the only time in history where the top 3% had been balanced, therefore it was what the devs talked about? What? Yeah, I mean, sure, it's going to take a little while for the it's going to take a little while for the and maybe the more casual players. Was it not good for the average player base? Was it not good in diamond? Was it not good in gold? Was it not good in silver? Was it not better in silver? I've got a feeling that it wouldn't make much of a difference for a couple of months, even if the player the actual things that you could play was more diverse and stuff like that, because people kind of wouldn't realize in the low ranks, because low rank players necessarily play less, therefore they get burned out less on bad gameplay loops and stuff like that. Does anyone know whether the low rank and middle rank queues were actually better or worse during the October 2020 patch? Because if we've come up with the only patch in history that the high rank queues are more balanced, I don't see a reason why that wouldn't feed down like everything else does over time. What?
The vast majority of players in any version, in any format, in any patch.
It was all fine. I thought it was all fine. Like he says it, and obviously I have to question it, because yeah, I don't want to just be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure it was all fine, right?
Balance is pretty irrelevant until they make easy heroes OP, of course, but other than that, people are just kind of doing their own thing for basically 97 to 99% of players.
Balance is irrelevant, synergy is irrelevant. It's like, what? No, they thought that the synergy was relevant, and that was its own issue. It was its own issue. The same way as counter swapping is its own issue at low ranks. It doesn't matter. It reduces the amount of like playstyle diversity you're allowed or you can have. And it's a real issue. It's a real issue with 6v6 that the playstyle diversity was limited by stupid low rank players not knowing that you don't have to pick the synergies. That was a problem, but it didn't mean it was an issue. It just meant that the community sentiment was wrong at the time.
Balance is almost irrelevant to them. What matters is the base functionality of the game, which, by the way, is something that Samito has...
Gameplay loop. Oh, yeah. We talked about the gameplay loop already. What do you say? The tank experience is terrible.
Said for years, which is why he argues you should only balance for the top tier of gameplay, and I push back against that a little bit. And we have to be selective of who gets included in that. Like, do we want Lifeweaver to be a top-down balanced hero? No. There's a lot of heroes that I think we should reasonably expect to have drop-off as they go up the ranks, but equally, if you gut a hero like Sojourn, Tracer, Widowmaker, they become more and more unplayable as you go down the ranks. So it happens both ends of the spectrum. And Orisa in Overwatch 1 was sent to the glue factory, which I can tell you is not...
What are we talking about right now? Does anyone know how this relates in any way to the October 2020 patch?
Should reasonably expect to have drop-off as they go up the ranks, but
how do we
is
get
almost
here?
irrelevant to them. What matters...
Balance is irrelevant to the... Why are we talking about why balance was irrelevant?
For the top 3%. This is because they've mastered those synergies and fit into it quite nicely. Now, the most important hole that we're going to poke into the...
Does he finish a single thought in this video, or does he just, like, wave at the thought and then walk off and go somewhere else and do another thought every single time?
The glorious October patch is pro 6v6 proponents shout from a mountaintop that it had balanced queue times. Queue times were great in that one fateful month in October, but they're really doing their argument a disservice when they don't acknowledge that there's a caveat to that. It was great for the top 3%. This is the area of the player base where balance matters the most. The vast majority of players, in any version, in any format, in any patch, balance is pretty irrelevant. Until they make easy heroes OP, of course, but other than that, people are just kind of doing their own thing for basically 97 to 99% of players. Balance is almost irrelevant to them. What matters is the base...
So balance is irrelevant, and therefore the October 2020 patch, despite it being balanced, wouldn't make the queue times balance out. Is that what we're saying? Or it doesn't matter that the game was balanced then, people still don't want to play tank? But then he starts talking about Sombra and Tracer, and I'm like, Sojourn and Tracer, I'm like, what the fuck why are we talking about that?
Of the game, which, by the way, is something that Samito has said for years, which is why he argues you should only balance for the top tier of gameplay, and I push back against that a little bit. And we have to be selective of who gets included in that. Like, do we want...
Well, why is it so hard to follow your train of thought?
Lifeweaver to be a top-down balanced hero? No. There's a lot of heroes that I think we should reasonably expect to have drop-off as they go up the ranks, but equally, if you gut a hero like Sojourn, Tracer, Widowmaker, they become...
How does this relate to the queue times?
More unplayable as you go down the ranks. So it happens both ends of the spectrum. And Orisa in Overwatch 1 was sent to the glue factory, which I can tell you is not something they want for their Overwatch characters. That's just a dud design. So they really tried to change Orisa to make her fun in Overwatch 2. And when the first rework came out, I think a lot of players were positive on the changes in comparison to the bunker.
The players that were positive on the change were dumb.
Playstyle she used to have. But overall, we still think kind of toxic to the game because just kind of a dumb easy mode tank hero. But hey, Overwatch always ends up with those types of picks in the game. There's like no way around it. And I think it's disingenuous to think that we're ever going to see a version of...
I started by thinking there was a script to this, and now I just think it's,
Overwatch that benefits from only skillful design. That's a huge mistake, guys, especially after my history of watching the gaming scene and seeing games that I like Quick Champions, or I didn't play this one, but it's similar in line with these, Shoot Mania. These games just die on...
Hey guys, can we talk about the October 2020 patch? All he said was the October 2020 patch, something. Synergy's still an issue. Yeah, well, the queue times were only announced to be good at the higher ranks. Something about hero balance. What? What are you on about? Like, hero balance doesn't matter to low rank players. Of course it matters like a little bit less, but why are we talking about it?
The vine. In some part to a lot of the part of the reason why is they're just too skillful. Nobody's trying to play Quake 1v1s. They're too hard. A lot of our player base wants more accessible heroes, and that's part of Overwatch's identity. So it's going to stay and not go away. And then on the other end of it, with this October patch concept, is players think that they can somehow blow up that one data point in the history of 6v6 and expand it to an entire history of the game they wish existed. But that's not how reality works, guys. That's not how...
It's a proof of concept that making the tank experience reasonable can make the queue times reasonable. Jesus Christ, is it that fucking hard? Yes, you can expand it out that a simple example of the queue times being reasonable means they theoretically could be reasonable. Like, what? They were not alternate historying this. Of course, like, why can't we alternate history this and say if the tank experience wasn't fucking awful for 5 years, that the tanks might be, like, more numerous in numbers? Like, why can't I make this argument?
Data collection works. In data collection, that would be called an outlier, the type of thing that you should completely ignore.
It's a proof of concept.
Because the vast majority of time, tank synergies were oppressive. Now, the diehards that suffer from survival...
We're not talking about synergies. Why are we talking about synergy? We're talking about the queue times.
Leadership bias push against this sentence I just said. They, and I'm sure many of you hear me say that and say, no, they weren't. I liked Ryan Zarya. I liked Winston Diva. Well, if that's the case, then it shouldn't be too hard for me to find a prominent Twitch streamer that quit the game precisely because of tank synergy. If you don't know who Tim the Tatman is, I think he's a pretty good litmus test for the average shooter player. Nowadays, we know all of our
Okay, sure. Go on.
dedicated Overwatch streamers, Emong, Jay, ML7, Flats. But back then, all of them either weren't streaming or had hundreds of views, and Tim the Tatman was our top dog, getting 10, 20, 30,000 concurrent viewers. Insane numbers. Tim quit the game because of tank synergy. He says it in this clip right here.
Oh, Darren, thank you for 27 months. I'm so mad. Just why? Why aren't you playing Overwatch anymore? Tell us why. I quit. I'm tired of Winston. Winston jumps in. Diva's like, don't shoot my Winston. Don't shoot my Winston. Don't shoot my Winston. It's not fun. This is me. Live look at me playing Overwatch in season 5. Ready? Do you get it? I'm sleeping because it's boring. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Also, there's a bit of a logical
I guarantee you, if Tim the Tatman was around right now in 5v5, do you know what he'd be saying? Oh, it's boring because Winston just jumps on me. Guaranteed. Fucking guaranteed. 100%. He's complaining about his angle being controlled by a tank. Like, he's still, like, that's still happening. It happens, like, a tiny bit less in the form of, like, there being less tanks on the field. Sure, like, yeah, this is the Spilo argument of, like, some people enjoy that. But do you think the average player of the games likes the game being a more hardcore version where you have more shooter in it? Or do you think the average player wants the more, like, relaxed version where you just generally do stuff? Who would jump off a cliff if you play 5v5? Yeah, let me just go on Twitch real quick. All right, let's see. Because we did go to 5v5, so it would make sense if you... Oh, I don't see any Overwatch here. It's weird that 5v5 hasn't fixed that, isn't it? It's weird that the video game is still based around space control. Like, Jesus.
Problem with this, where somehow the pro 6v6 crowd doesn't seem to realize that if they both say tanks were more powerful and had more potential to do more in 6v6, but then somehow say, but that wasn't oppressive.
I didn't say more powerful. Nobody cares about power. People care about ability to have a reasonable frontline trade that you've already admitted it does not exist in 5v5.
No. If you didn't have to counterpick your tanks, that's the definition of oppressive. Like, you don't know what the word oppressive means if you think that your tank picks should be uncounterable. Now, maybe you prefer and like certain stable, reasonable, good to play with tanks like Reinhardt, Zarya, Winston, Diva to dominate the game. But players like Tim, who wanted to play Cassidy back then, who had far less options, which is much more stiff of a character, of course, there just wasn't enough answers for dive. So the devs saved the game by inventing a character who countered dive, Brigitte. And of course, we know how that story ended up.
Meta right now literally is ass.
So you're saying he was a dumbass and he quit the game due to being a dumbass? Therefore, like, the 6v6 was a problem.
Would rather do push-ups. I would rather lose weight. I would rather run a mile. Things like that. Those are some things I'd rather do than play Overwatch right now in this meta because it is boring as F.
Furthermore, there's a big percentage of shooter players that like to play DPS and specifically the hit scan ones that poke from range. More Overwatch dedicated players are going to be more into the flex DPS or the tank support synergy and the team play of the game. I would consider myself one of these players.
Different players are going to be, not more dedicated players, different players.
But Overwatch 2 is much more friendly to the players that want to play the shooty characters because their queue times are lower and there's less tanks in the way.
Queue times, like, you can't have a queue time section, not address queue times, and then have an October section and not address the October patch, then have a Tim the Tatman section that makes absolutely no, like, relevant sense. Like, he's saying that tank synergies were the thing ruining Overwatch, but we're not even discussing tank synergies, we're discussing other things. Like, it's just a mess.
It simply isn't true to state definitively that players didn't have a problem with two tanks in the way as long as they were the right tanks. No. It isn't just a Risa Sig. Like, Reinhardt Sig was hell for Metro to shoot through on Soldier. I watched him complain about it. And I think there's a massive
fix it
misconception with Overwatch 2 that players think if your
tank... That's not tank synergy, that's shields.
...is getting countered, you automatically lost the game and there's nothing for you to do.
No, you just don't get to play the video game if your tank's being countered.
As Jake has said, that's just not true. You can make any tank matchup work, and it's
it's just very boring. It's awful to play.
Gotten better the more they've balanced the tank in 5v5. Hog does not counter Winston and Ryan anymore. The armor rework they just did goes a long way to beat out the enemy picking one or two counters to make your life miserable. I want to detail how the counterpick matchups have evolved with that change, but we'll say that for another video. And what I would really like the 6v6 crowd to do, and Samito included, is to not move the goalpost on this point, because he stated that they will never fix it with balance, and I disagree. They've already made improvements on the counterpick picking situation against most.
There will never... No, we're not talking about the counter-picking. The counter-picking can 100% be alleviated slightly with balance. It can't be fixed theoretically without 4 or 5 reworks to quite a lot of the tank category. But yes, of course you can slightly alleviate it by balancing your game properly and reducing the amount of hate you can have on each individual tank. For instance, by reverting stupid changes to armor that you made for no reason in the transition to Overwatch 2. But like, we're not saying that it's just the counter picking that's an issue. We're saying the counter picking and the terrible tank experience, partially as a result of the counter picking and the lack of frontline interaction, making tanking awful.
Most tanks. When I pick Winston now, the enemy tries to go Reaper or Bash.
When you pick Winston, the enemy can do nothing to stop you. They're just like pounding over them. They can run. You can run straight over them as long as you've got full health when you engage. There's nothing they can do. And now there's not a single position in the game within a Winston jump range that is stabilizable without having a break there.
Can take a few hits before I'm insta-dead. That's a huge improvement, and I can't say that was ever the case in 6v6. In 6v6, if you had the wrong tank matchups, you could get hard screwed, which is part of the thing that they say they like about 6v6. I'm wondering why they think players weren't queuing for the role in 6v6, yet they say things like, oh, it was great.
Because the gameplay experience was bad. Because it was hog on 30% of games and double shield on another 30% of games. Like, is it... What? Nobody's ever said that the... What? Nobody's ever said that the role queue experience for tank was good. It's like the starting argument that the role queue experience for tank was bad. Like, that's where everyone starts.
I, as Echo, could roll around in insta-burst tanks. Isn't that wonderful? Like, the tank experience also sucked in 6v6. They just sucked for different reasons. Both could be...
Yes, but those more extreme characters were less of a problem in 6v6 than they are in 5v5. The tank hating characters were less of an issue, specifically because there were 2 tanks on the field. Therefore, they could be used, instead of just spamming onto the tank on main, they could be used to control an angle and contest an enemy tank in that angle.
Miserable. And this is the thing that I'm really hoping that my content
gave the DPS a chance at controlling the lane.
Advance in the community is learning how to actually play Overwatch 2 instead of just complaining about it nonstop, because there's so many misconceptions on how to play this game. It reminds me of Overwatch 1, where players said a lot of clueless things at that time too. And the truth was, in 6v6, if your tanks don't synergize together and the enemies do, your whole team would get rolled. It would be hard.
That's just not true. It's just not true. It was a community thing for the most part. He's so hard to argue against because you can't even get on his train of thought for more than 20 seconds.
Your whole team would get rolled. It would be hard for anybody to have any impact anywhere. Whereas in 5v5, while you may still lose, you can always get an exit pick here or there, or eke out some value somewhere. You're always contributing to the game, and you don't have to just stare at shields the whole time. It's objectively true that you're shooting targets more in 5v5. I don't know why there's any pushback.
No, it's not. You are shooting targets less in 5v5 than you are in 6v6 if very easy common sense changes are made to the game to prevent the shields being so dominant. Like, it's obviously we have to think about alternate universes, because because the game was never balanced properly for 6v6. Like, what?
Back about this.
I agree with Freedo about tank combo, but only go with like mass and GM players, and plat didn't matter that much. Yeah, I do think that all of this, the misunderstanding from lower ranked players, that it actually matters, because they don't realize that bubbling a Reinhardt who is doing nothing doesn't do anything, right? So if the Reinhardt has a Roadhog who's going and doing something instead, he's crying because he can't get a bubble that's going to do nothing for him. Like, it's so hard because it's all in community sentiment, and the community sentiment is completely biased by the high ranked gameplay. And yes, that's an issue, but it's just as much of an issue in Overwatch 2 with counter swapping it is in the synergy picks. The synergy picks weren't actually good. They weren't good unless you had good timing and good positioning for the synergies. So hard.
This isn't hard to look at. Just look at the old gameplay of 2 tanks. Pick any tanks. In 6v6, you have to shoot tanks way more. You don't actually have to do that in a lot of 5v5 matchups.
But the tanks were killable in 6v6. So in 5v5, you're shooting an unkillable brick for 20% of the time. In 6v6, you were shooting killable targets 100% of the time, apart from when you were shooting shields, which would have been removed anyway, for the most part.
do because it's easier. They're big targets, often just standing in front, and a lot of players don't play the game in a very dynamic way. They just sort of vaguely want to face smash together, but that's part of the issue as well. The devs did dumb down the gameplay intentionally, but if we're going to admit...
5v5 tanks explode too? Yeah, but one person can't explode a tank in 5v5. In 6v6, one person could theoretically, with a little bit of resources, duel a tank. Like if a Zarya went on you and she didn't have personal, you could actually win that fight. But in 5v5, you need the team to explode them.
That the game is dumbed down, the benefit to that, remember, always trade-offs, is that it's more accessible to the average player. These decisions to go to 5v5 were not intended to only benefit the top-tier meta balancing. Samito really loses the plot with this because he hinges his entire argument that no, it wasn't double shield, it was the supports that kept the double shield alive. Meanwhile, the fun factor of shooting shields wasn't...
Just shut up. Who cares about double shield? Why are we talking about double shield? What does it matter? It's removed anyway, so why the fuck are we talking about it? I'm saying double shield made a bad tank experience and so people didn't want to play tank. And you just talk completely past that and then randomly bring it up with a completely separate argument to say that 6v6 was boring because double shield existed. Like, well, I don't care if it was boring because double shield existed. It's not there anymore.
Into good regardless. Like, they both can be bad. These aren't mutually exclusive ideas. The supports can be OP and shooting shields can also suck. These are two things that both need to be addressed.
Shut
and in
up,
5v5, supports are more heavily biased towards being offensive, more so than ever before. Because trust me, I hated Batiste with a passion in 6v6 because his gameplay revolved around hiding behind the team and mostly just shooting a shield to add shield pressure. In 5v5, I can constantly apply pressure to enemy exploitable targets. I'm crossfiring.
We've already seen this clip.
I'm taking duels. Now, I think supports are a bit OP now in 5v5. They weren't always at the launch of the game, of course. They overtuned them a bit, but the fun factor of the gameplay loop is far better because there isn't two tanks in the way constantly. It's more of a shooter game. I'm shooting opposing players, not working down tanking defenses always. The thing that I think the 6v6ers often forget, and they're blinded by their own expertise about the game. Most players don't play the meta. So the meta support compositions and how OP they are, nobody was playing Brig. Through almost all of 6v6, players were bad at Brig. So something that was a huge problem at the highest tiers, players were just feeding on Brig.
But they did know the meta, and they weren't able to play the tanks they wanted to because of the meta, and that was alleviated by the meta improving. Therefore, the tank queues don't necessarily have to be as much of a problem if the game's properly balanced. Therefore, we can go to 6v6 without an issue. Like, what is happening?
Or every other tier. They weren't good at the character. So no matter how OP and sustainable and how much they broke all of this, these things didn't happen for the average player. The thing that always happened was the shields were in the way. The tanks were in the way. There was less shooter game.
No, stop talking about shit. If you want to argue that the tanks were in the way of angle control because there are more tanks on the field, do it. But I'm going to counter with the fact that tank busters as a category was more healthy in 6v6, specifically because they could control the lanes and fight for the lanes that the tanks they exist in, right? And that entire category of hero, the tank buster, which always was weird, like goofy design that may not have been healthy, but at least it was valid in 6v6. In 5v5, every single character that was theoretically a tank buster has to be completely reworked. And still has yet to be completely reworked. A third of the cast needs reworks for this format to work in a reasonable way. A third of the cast, at the very minimum.
Going on in more MOBA game. Now, because of that being the case, regardless of how powerful and complex and deep and beautiful the high-end tank synergy could be, players didn't want to queue it. They didn't queue it in open queue, they didn't queue it in roll queue, and even the glorious October patch. Yes, it was amazing for 1 month for top 3% of players. It didn't fix it for the rest of them. Maybe it was a bit better, but those players were playing those...
You have no evidence, and a bit better is something that filters down over time. Stupid players do not start playing the meta unless it is... Do you know why it's called the October patch, Freedo? Because it lasted for October!
Characters anyway. That's what I think these commentators don't realize. Like, they were already playing Rhine, and they weren't good at double shield necessarily. Not all of them. The team comps never took form for the average player the way that these high-ranked experts talk about it. What happened to the average player was what was the easiest thing to do.
You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say that synergy ruined the game, like with one face, and then turn around and say, well, the synergy didn't really matter because lower players didn't use the synergy anyway with the other way. You can't have both. It either ruins the game for low-ranked players or it isn't impactful whatsoever. Which one do you want? Which one do you want?
Always. And that was Rhine because he had the best shielding stats. Just put Rhine in the way. Even as OP as double shield was, you did have to aim those abilities. Otherwise, you would lose. So even then, Rhine did pretty well up to GM, I'd say. It wasn't really about players struggling to counter double shield. Players have routinely shown us for 6 years of 6v6 that no matter how strong or new and novel they make the role, they didn't want to queue it. That can change a bit.
No, they haven't, because they didn't make it new. They didn't. Like, tell me in which way did they make the role novel and new since we had any like revealed preferences of the players from role queue, or even before, when we were talking about before, like when there were less tanks than any other role? And tell me the specific time where you think that tanks were reasonably put toward and protected, and like their faces were stroked every night before they went to bed, and they got read a bedtime story, and they were well fed. And you tell me that scenario and show me that the tank queues were still poor, right? If you can do that, I'm happy. But you cannot point to a single period in Overwatch history where the tank player base was treated in any way the same way as the DPS player base.
The much cooler tanks we have in Overwatch 2, but we would have to assume that they would change it by like twice as much. So Gavin Winter was found in Twitch chat.
My opinion as a system designer is that I prefer 5v5 because like queue times are much better in 5v5, approximately twice as good as they were in 6v6. At what time in 6v6, Gavin? Are they approximately twice as good as they were in 6v6 after you abandoned the game for 2 years in the terrible state? Or was that kind of like after 6v6 when you put double shield into the game, or like 6v6 during the October patch? The problem is we're talking about a 2-year period of role queue, and during that 2-year period we had double shield, we had October patch, and then we had double shield. And like, where are we talking about twice as good? When twice as good? What, like, of course it was twice as good at some point. Twice as good compared to the worst of Overwatch 1 is actually a bad turnout. It's bad.
Explaining this
It's not
now
as good.
are roughly twice as good as they were in 6v6. That's an insane improvement. And again, nothing to do with the player numbers. It's about the proportion per MMR. So our confidence in 6v6 would have to be so high that it could double the effective amount of tank players that we've ever had. And the only evidence we could ever fix it was in one patch. Let me ask you this. Do we really think the devs are only going to...
No, the only time it has ever been fixed, not the only evidence we could fix it, we can fix it, it was fixed, was in one patch. That's the only time we actually got to have a reasonably balanced tank experience. Like, what is this? Oh, the only chance was this one, maybe, possibly it was fixable. It was fixed.
To balance it in the way that a few hundred of us creators want them to, or are they going to do what they're going to do? This is the problem. If you put all of your eggs in the October basket, you have to think somehow that the devs are going to reproduce that result forever. That strategy means they can't.
No, I think they need to treat the tank, they need to treat it so that the different strategies in the game are more or less viable, and the game is not absolutely fucked by double shield. Not absolutely fucked is not a high standard. It really isn't.
Mess up. Whereas in 5v5, the worst thing they ever did was make support too strong, and the queue times were screwed there. But other than that, queue times have been good the entire time. No matter if tank was miserable, no matter if tank was...
They're not that good, by the way. They're actually not that good right now.
Wrong. Generally, the queue times have been great in...
They're good in peak, but they are not good. To be clear, other games have a 2-minute queue for everything that you could ever do in the game. 2 minutes is a long queue. Overwatch has 6-minute plus queues for support and DPS all of the damn time. It is actually not good.
5v5. Across the board, all skill tiers even better in quick play. That was not the case in many eras of Overwatch 1, and that's a problem for your game. That kills the game, which is why I get so passionate about this, because the level of confidence we should have...
So passionate about never actually meeting the argument ever, like talking around I get so passionate about talking around the point.
Should be outstanding.
I really
it should be
love
overwhelming
changing the
that we
topic.
should have to go to 6v6 in order to risk the downside of horrible queue times, because players still won't want to play the role. And what you don't want to do in critical thinking is called wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is...
I just hate when people bring up critical thinking phrases and debate phrases, because they always come when people say like all of the terms, they always come to an air of smugness.
When you dream up a reality you wish could exist because it's convenient and feels comfortable. Man, wouldn't it be great if we could just like solve obesity by forcing all of the fast food restaurants to serve broccoli? Geez, we'll fix it. Fix it right there. Just stop selling fast food and have them sell broccoli. We know that's not going to work, right? Because you can already get broccoli easily. Broccoli's at the store. It's not hard to get broccoli. It's not about access to broccoli. That's the problem. It's about what do humans do when they make their choices. Trust me, I eat a lot of vegetables, okay? I play tank. I play the roles that are least popular. I played support.
They play the game with the best gameplay experience. There's never been a good gameplay experience. What the fuck are you talking about?
When it was weak. I love the least popular roles, but no amount of me liking it or me doing the right thing makes everyone else contribute to do the thing that's going to help everybody. And I think we've got a great opportunity to watch these other games that are coming out with Marvel and Deadlock, which have similar gameplay to Overwatch in some ways. Watch them go down this route. Watch Marvel as a 6v6 game find whatever role is less popular but required to win be an issue for their open queue format. It's going to happen. And Marvel, just like Overwatch had to, figure out what kind of game do they want to have. Do they want to have a freely expressive one or a sensible competitive one. You can't have both. There's trade-offs there. Either you're going to please Video Game Donkey, who thinks that just being able to play whatever you want freely should be more important, or you're going to appease like some of the hardcore players that want to play a reasonable team comp. I want a tank in front of me too, and I was willing to play that tank. It's funny, I saw Samito react to a video where the creator unironically said, man, I used to love Overwatch 1. I would play DPS at a super high level, and then sometimes I would smurf on my master's account to play Reinhardt and run people over, as if this is like a huge benefit to their argument. I'm like, wait, hold on. Yeah, well, duh, if you like smurfing, you're gonna have a good time. You can smurf in this game and dominate just with your skill. What do you mean? Why should we design the game around having an OP role that people don't want to play? Why would we do that? This is like expecting everyone else to eat vegetables for you because it makes you...
Because the role makes everyone else's experience. Because the role is a diverse, different way of playing the game, and it makes everyone else's experience more interesting. The role of tank is what makes the game interesting. What are you seriously suggesting, that we just remove the tank role and make them all into smaller DPS? Is that the fix? We just reduce their model size by 50%, make them all DPS?
You feel better to be around them. No, I want to talk a bit about my last appearance talking about this issue on the Group Up podcast, in that SVB interrupted me when I was kind of going at Sam a little bit, and it made me feel really self-conscious, actually. Like, I was worried that I was to blame, like I was doing something wrong, and I've spent months thinking about this, actually, concerned that I was going too hard at him. I even apologized at the time, but after some time has passed, and...
You were acting like an asshole. You were genuinely acting like an asshole.
How Sam's conducted himself on his channel.
And do you know what Sam responded to you acting like an asshole? He responded by just saying nothing. Just actually saying nothing. He just sat there and he took it. You basically called him an asshole. You basically called him stupid. You basically saying that he's a flat earther. You just took it. Because if you actually listen to what Sam says, he never actually talks. He's actually very diplomatic on what he says.
And I finally went back to listen. Like, was I too harsh in the things I said? I called him utopian. I said he's moving the goalpost. No, I wasn't, actually. I just think...
The trouble is, you never give an example of somebody moving the goalpost. You just say these things because it is if you feel like it might be true, and there's no way to argue against it because you just talk around the issue.
Sam doesn't know what these words mean. I challenge him, and the rest of you, to learn what these things mean. This isn't an insult. I'm not just chatting shit. I'll respect any of you.
Do you know what these debate terms mean?
Point if you argue logically and you don't commit logical fallacies. So what you can't do is be like Lucy from Peanuts, and when Charlie Brown gets to the football and almost swings to hit it...
What goalpost did he move? Please tell me specifically what goalpost he moved.
Pull the football away. Move the goalpost. Say our goal is to do this, but they could never do it, and as soon as they start to, whatever. So as an example, everyone loves to hate Roadhog. They say Roadhog doesn't function as a tank. Well, the first thing they said was he'll never function because of anti-nade. The rework couldn't work. The problem is, a lot of the conversation around this, people don't seem to know what the words work or balance mean. Work should not be a subjective thing if we're arguing about the objective principles of the system. And what is completely unfair to do is say that Roadhog doesn't work in 5v5 as an objective point, and then when I call them out on this and say, well, actually, he's incredibly effective, he's a very good tank, he's reliable, he'll win the game, he doesn't throw, he was kind of a throw pick.
He is not healthy design space in 5v5. Are you seriously arguing to me that Roadhog is healthy design space for the video game? Is that the argument we're making here? Are you just saying that Roadhog is fine? Is this what we're talking about? Like, what do I just have to completely disrespect any opinion you have, or just most of them at this point?
Pick in 6v6, so in my opinion, he works better for 5v5 because he doesn't throw the game. But then they move the goalpost to a subjective point and say, yeah, no, but it doesn't work for me personally. I don't like it. Well, yeah, but I don't like playing against Doomfist. And personally,
no, it's a design space argument. It's always gonna be a design space argument. He said that it works, not that it's great design. Yeah, I feel like everyone was arguing that Roadhog is poor design because of a lot of issues with his character. Thank you very much for the sub, dude. Appreciate it. Like, the issue with Roadhog's character, and the reason why Roadhog doesn't work, is that Roadhog has hard pressure. Roadhog is selfish. Roadhog's breather is uninteractive when it works as mitigation, and completely interacts horribly with anti when it doesn't work as mitigation. It's either boring or broken. If Ana is necessary and good enough to counter him, then the power level of the character needs to account for the fact that a certain amount of the time he will have to play into Ana, and therefore he has to be better when the character isn't actually broken, when he's not playing into Ana. So, like, there's a load of untenable issues there that just exist because of his lack of ability mitigation. And the fact that he's selfish, and the fact that he has hard pressure, unlike any other tank, which is horribly boring. So guys, Roadhog problems. Okay, Roadhog problems. Roadhog is a character that is DPS, right? He's a DPS in the tank category. We all agree. Yeah? We're happy. What did DPS do? DPS do hard pressure. Okay, so the DPS in the category, what they do is they go pick Roadhog. They go pick Roadhog, and do you know what their tank SR is compared to their DPSR is? Their tank SR is lower. So when they go on Roadhog and they play at the lower SR, they have better positioning, and therefore the hard pressure from Roadhog comes out of nowhere for the people because it's not well telegraphed to them, because he's not in a position they expect him to be in. And he hits more shots than Roadhog at their level would hit. Therefore, he is inconsistent, annoying, and more importantly, playing against Roadhog who are actually your level is a red herring and poor practice for playing against the average Roadhog, which is smurfing, effectively smurfing. A cloud that mitigates projectiles in a cloud? Don't see why not. But unfortunately, they're random. What you've done there is you've reworked the character, and reworking the character costs development time. So, like, tank players should have a healing as mitigation ability. Make breather stationary cooldown like Overwatch 1. Oh yeah, and there's also the good old interactability things where he interacts really poorly with stuns, which is much more of an issue in 5v5. Therefore, they needed to make the abilities uninteractable in order to make it so that he can be balanced into 5v5, which is just more boring. I don't know if anyone says it's anything other than just more boring. And also the fact that he is designed to shoot tanks, and he is a tank buster as a character, and the hook hits tanks more, and the hook is more likely to kill tanks. Therefore, he disproportionately hates on specific brawl tanks, as a matter of fact. They moved Doom to tank. Why didn't they move Hog to DPS? Because Hog was one of the factors in actually balancing out queue times. Because Hog... See, the thing is, what we do is we put a DPS character in the tank category, so more DPS players will pick tank and make the tank experience terrible for all the players that actually do pick tank. Smart. So they quit. Therefore, we have to keep putting more DPS players into the tank category. But we roll that ball down the hill for about 2 years, and we end up in 5v5 because we have 15-minute DPS queue times. It's just, there is no part of Hog's kit that is healthy in any way in terms of design space. And you say we're moving the goalposts. How are we moving the goalposts? I have told you that anti-nade is a problem. Anti-nade is still a problem for Roadhog. It is still an issue. And their fix to it was to make the character less interactable. Not anything else. It was to make the character less interactable. Jesus Christ. Fun tank mechanics is still the solution? Yes, the solution is to design the game properly. Or you can just put the game into the more forgiving format where the stupid things that Blizzard create, because they're not very smart about the things they create, are more generally viable and less unhealthy for the design space.
I would like to have an answer pick that's balanced. I don't want Hog to be overpowered, but I certainly want him to be able to battle Doomfist. So let's not move the goalpost. If you say the system doesn't do a thing, you can't change your opinion when they change it. And another logical fallacy for you guys, what you
just show me anyone changing their opinion.
Don't want to do is called argument from incredulity. So to be incredulous means you just can't believe a thing. No amount of you believing it or having faith in it matters. It matters if it happens or not, right? The evidence is what matters. The faith-based argumentation in our entire game community is just out of control. We need to look at what is.
Yeah, you're never allowed to argue for 5v5 and the fact that tank queues could be better, because there's no time you can point to that the tank queues are better. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely
not what
ridiculous.
We imagine to be. And it isn't that
you can argue not from incredulity, but you can argue from a general common sense idea of what things would do if you change things.
I have all the answers, guys. It's just that I know how to not say obviously false, fallacious things. So I'm more careful in how I make points. So I'm wrong less often, just because I don't marry myself to ideas.
Nothing about this video has been careful or measured in any way, shape, or form. You have flip-flopped between 30 different arguments and given no good covering of any of them. You have not accurately portrayed so many of the arguments against you. You have purposely downplayed them. You have the best 6v6 argument video section of your video that's 3.5 minutes long, and you go through 10 different. You have 2 bullet points and you go through 10 different points in it. It is not honest.
That are provably false if they change them.
Yeah, and you need to edit relevant clips into your background random. Thank you.
This is why you don't want to make arguments that put a post in the ground that's so severe that you make it a binary they can or can't do a thing. Guys, we've seen every iteration of the game possible in 8 years. Everything's been meta. Everything's been a throw pick. Everything's been up and down every single time.
No, we have not. We have not seen the iteration of the game where the tanks are treated in a healthy way.
Why would you ever say they couldn't do a thing? All they gotta do is change.
Apart from October 2020, and we're not allowed to talk about that because apparently it's apparently that's an outlier. Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about the one time when the tank player base and the experience has actually been reasonable.
The numbers or flip it around, or they can do anything. And this armor change is possibly one of the most surprising ones to me, because I didn't anticipate they would do a thing like this, but they reverted armor, and it means that a lot of the traditional counter picks don't function anymore. The
Yeah, I mean, yeah. They reverted another one of the many things that they broke on the transition to Overwatch 2. Yeah, good, great. Like, I've got a list the size of my arm, and it's still growing of the things they've reverted that they changed when they made Overwatch 2. The things that just made complete sense.
Shotgun tanks are far less effective at going at the tanks. So tank busting with a tank pick is way worse now. Some players are saying Reaper's useless because of this. I'm not sure I agree with
Which means that there is no way to counter swap the tanks. There's no way to do it. And that's the point. Like, counter swapping the tank in 5v5, where the tank does nothing if you counter swap them, is more unhealthy than in 6v6, where the tank demanded more resources if you counter swap them. It's boring to play tank into counter swaps in 5v5. It's fine to play tanks into counter swaps in 6v6. Even if there's the same amount of viability, it is boring.
That, but I think now it's expensive to counterpick the tank. You can still do it, but it isn't free like it was before. That's a massive improvement. When can we ever point to a time in 6v6 where they made a massive improvement other than just gutting heroes we didn't like? When did they ever like keep an interaction the way they wanted, but toned it down so that multiple things were in play?
Who the fuck cares? Why would I care? Why are we talking about that balancing 5 years ago?
Didn't happen, guys. 6v6 doesn't do that. 5v5 does. And furthermore, there's some general things that we just always forget about 6v6, which were constant complaints about the game since launch.
The moment somebody like talks about 5v5 and 6v6 and they start talking about the balance in 6v6, the previous balance 5 years ago in 6v6, my brain just turns off and it's just waffle from that point onwards.
Universal things that like a games critic might point out, but the top ranking players of the world of our game are going to miss because they're so steeped in knowledge about the game that they missed the forest for the trees. 6v6 was way more chaotic, way more things to track. The visual clutter was insane, no matter how they balanced it. It was hard to know where your team was, and in that style of game, it was much more...
That is not true, in my opinion. I don't think that's true in any way, shape, or form. I think 5v5 is a much more complicated format. I think it's a much... Because 5v5 implies that you can't route angles in a reasonable way. You are disincentivized to group up in any way. The game becomes a lot less stable, and when it's a lot less stable, it's a lot more chaotic. So despite the one person being removed from the game game is less readable than it ever has been. Less readable than ever. And that is not necessarily an issue in my mind, because honestly, any player below Diamond is not reading the game anyway. They're just playing the game and shooting the person in front of them. There is no way to read the game of Overwatch. Overwatch is way too fast. It's crazy. It's stupid. We should not be designing for readability. We do not even care about Overwatch League anymore. So why are we designing for it? Make a good game. Do not care about the rest. Gold players do not get more overwhelmed because there's an extra person on their team and the enemy team. They get more overwhelmed because there's a fucking tracer on their backline every single time with nobody to peel for them.
Important for you to play around.
Therefore, it's a worse gameplay experience.
Around your teammate in perfect concert. That happens a bit in 5v5, and you're certainly going to be more effective the better you are at it, but you also conversely can do a lot on your own. That was not the case in 6v6, guys. If you were good at the game, you felt that. But the game can't just be designed for the best players in the world. They were trying to make it approachable to average players out there. So when Shroud comes to our game, he doesn't get stuck in plats because he doesn't understand ult economy and the team aspects of the game. Or Dr. Disrespect.
Why are we marketing to Shroud and Dr. Disrespect? Why aren't we marketing to the average player? Why aren't we marketing to the gold players and the silver players and the players that just come into the game? Why are we caring about these people? This is the game with tanks. People are going to have to deal with that and learn positioning. That's it.
I think was Silver in our game and just didn't understand why he couldn't take his own solo angles as Cassidy. What 5v5 is an attempt to do is make the game more approachable and accessible to the popular...
You can't take your solo angles with Cassidy in 5v5. There's not a single clip he has of a person coming back to the game and saying, wow, this is so much better, and then sticking with the game because 5v5 allowed more DPS angles, etc., and less control from the tanks. People, like, it just didn't happen. So you can't argue this without examples of it actually happening. Do you think this is the real thing, or can you point out people not liking Overwatch? Like, you can't just point out people not liking Overwatch and then go, well, we changed Overwatch, so they must like it now, and give no example of them actually liking it.
Parts about it, as opposed to...
Yeah, and there's the other thing. Do we want to compete against Apex Legends in their production, their content production schedule, and other things like that, and the type of game it is, and the type of people that play it? Or do we want to attract our own unique player base that care specifically about hero shooters that involve kind of like more MOBA-ish elements and healing and resources and tanking and other stuff like that? Why are we marketing to the same people that everyone else is marketing to? Why is it bad to have a niche product?
Forcing the community to play the thing that nobody wants to play anyway. I'd respect this position more if the 6v6 camp were much more honest about the downsides of 6v6.
Fuck off.
Which I don't hear them say. They really think that the October patch can be the reality of 6v6, which instead it's an outlier. This is utopian thinking, guys.
Freedo, all they did was make it so that Double Shield wasn't dominating the game. They did not reinvent the wheel. They did not do 100 reworks. They did not... It wasn't like... The October patch wasn't a fucking knife point. The October patch was just a correction of someone being like... all the October patch did was pull someone out of the quicksand. That's all they did. The game was so deep in the quicksand, and the October patch just pulled them out onto the surface, and they were suddenly able to breathe again. It's not like it's a crazy ask. It's just a reasonable allowance to play the things you want to play and not play something that's awful. They threw us a lifeline, yet it's really not a lot to ask. Why are you treating it like it's a crazy amount of stuff? Like, how many reworks are we going to have to do for 5v5? Like, how many characters? Like, how many of the tanks, how many of the DPS are going to have to still be reworked? Because Orisa, D.Va, Zarya, and Roadhog, at the very least, are still not in any way healthy. How many more are we going to have to do for characters that we perfectly healthy in 6v6? How long until you just say this is not worth the development time and effort, and it is a effective way of balancing our game to put it into 6v6 in the more forgiving format for extreme or silly things to exist?
It's only a matter of time that even on a pro mod...
Widow Hanzo made Junkrat, at least on the DPS side. Yeah, Pharah had to be completely reworked as well. But she was... Yeah, I think the Pharah rework was healthy. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Version of the game where you control all the balancing, that some perfect combination of two tanks beats out all the others. I'm confident in that. Now listen, I was a far better player in 6v6 because there was a lot more easier routes to value in hiding in the team formation, playing an easier hero. While yes,
that's what people enjoy. And there's like that hidden argument behind the scenes of DPS players want to shoot something that is more or less relevant. That's what they want to do. That's what they enjoy. They want to press their ultimate and have it win a fight. Support players want to heal something, and tank players want to generally like throw resources at the enemy team. If there's no meaningful tank trade, nobody wants to play tank. If there's not enough players to heal, nobody wants to play support. If there's not enough people to DPS, nobody wants to play DPS that are reasonable. Nobody likes to shoot shields, sure, but the shields aren't in the fucking game anymore. So why are we talking about that?
Tank had a higher skill ceiling at the top end. For the average player, it was easier because you could just anchor a position and not have to hit as many abilities. You didn't have to aim. You could kind of just stand in the right spot, receive cooldowns. I mean, like Reinhardt never pinned in Overwatch 1. It was bad to do so. Whereas in Overwatch 2, you've got to be hitting your abilities skillfully. And the problem is, those aren't...
Reinhardt did pin in Overwatch 1. He just pinned things that wouldn't instantly kill him. It was an actual decision to be made with a risk versus reward instead of just being a button that you use on cooldown in the general area of the enemy team and cross your fingers that you fish someone. Literally all Reinhardt does now is he throws out a fishing line once every 10 seconds towards the enemy team and occasionally catch something and insta-kills it. Wow, so fun and engaging. Yeah, no decision-making skills. Oh, just cancel it. Worst case scenario, get a bit closer to the enemy team.
So hard that the top players find it challenging, they all can more or less do it. And what they're looking for is a more advanced tactics game going on, which there was much more tactics in how you moved your two tanks around in Overwatch 1. But for the average player, we aren't good enough to hit every ability on any of the tank heroes. So that allows for a lot of mechanical mastery that matters far more in the sequel, making the game feel much more like a shooter than a team comp RPG builder. While yes, the strategy and tactics of the game were more advanced at their peak potential when there was multiple tanking and taking...
But you already said multiple times in this video that the synergies weren't that impactful. I know that you also said the synergies were impactful because you have no idea what your arguments are, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. You just have to have one argument or the other argument. Stop flip-flopping.
space that also lessened the impact of the shooter mechanics of the game. You can't have it both ways. What I would prefer us to do in our community is talk more about how the other roles can help the tank battle, or how to improve at their own agency on the game, rather than hyper-focusing only...
They can't help the tank battle because tanks have one health pool with no extender to their pressure cycle, therefore shooting them stops them doing stuff. There is no way to stop this without the additional resources or somebody else going on a different angle if the enemy team do use those resources against you. That is interesting or meaningful. There is no way to fix this. It's always going to be a non-meaningful tank frontline trade. It never will be anything different. You can alleviate the counter swapping, but you can't fix it. There's nothing you can do
on tank gameplay and blaming it for all the woes of the game. The squishy roles have grown to be the dominant carry impact in Overwatch 2, whereas in a lot of eras of Overwatch 1, they spectated the action. Part of me feels bad to have to disillusion you guys of some strongly held beliefs, which is the method that you're in love with the game. A lot of you are in love with the idea of the potential game we could have, but that game doesn't exist. When people come to my live stream to talk about 6v6, they make it seem like it reversed their diabetes, raised their credit score, brought their dead dog back from the grave. The grass is greener, the air is fresher.
I played it. I played the video game and I like it. I have actually played the format. It is fine. It is better. Okay? I am not just thinking in theoreticals.
No, man. Overwatch is a complicated, frustrating, diverse mess of a game, no matter what the format is. I'd like us to get back to talking about this game with reasonable expectations for what it even can do. Hero diversity, queue times, individual agency, these are all massive wins for 5v5. And we certainly will never expect the design of the game to be focused around...
We will be playing it every other weekend on a Sunday at 4 p.m. BST.
1% of players who are never happy anyway, because even they disagree. There's always going to be some high skill ceiling output hero that's dominating the game.
Waffle. The game's never going to be perfect, therefore don't change anything. Yeah, it's never going to be exactly as you want it, therefore 6v6 isn't worth doing. Waffle.
They're mad because it's not in their role. It always happens, guys. The best thing that top players can hope for is high skill expression heroes are at the top of the meta. That's it. But even then, they still find ways to hate it. Let's instead talk about what the best case scenario in the current format could be and work from there.
Nope. Let's talk about the best format that the game could be in before it gets outcompeted by Marvel rivals on their content delivery schedule.
But hey, Kevin Winter also revealed on Twitch that the dev team themselves is split on this issue because it's a big team. So maybe some of them want the same gameplay you want. I've been grinding tank on stream so you guys can see how I interact with the very frustrating role that it is, and it has its ups and downs. We'll make a separate video about the tank experience. But trust me when I say, I also found it frustrating in 6v6. The reasons change, but in every game, tanking is never as fun as carrying. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a long time since we've made a video this in-depth. And well, there's some pretty private reasons for that I'm gathering the strength to actually talk about, because I think a lot of you have noticed that for the past few years, I haven't quite been the same guy that I was for the majority of Overwatch 1's life. And there's reasons for that. Things happened to me that I had to deal with, overcome, evolve, and become an entirely new person. For the better, but I nearly had to die to do it. It's been a long time since I've been able to focus on my work the way that I have in this video. It's not easy to make this video. And I've only had the mental clarity in recent days, in fact, to be back to the old me again. And it's hard for
Well, I'm glad you feel better, but I don't think there was any mental clarity available for this one.
Me to cope with the reality that I'm not as good of a creator as I used to be, fallen so many tiers with how popular our content has been. But this video we're pretty confident in. But more importantly, I'm confident that I can be at this level again, having overcome some serious BS in life. So I'll have more to say on that. Over the years, people noticed, but it wasn't obvious enough to, cause a stir. But I want you guys to know that I'm better, I'm safe, and I'm on a right track, and I'm excited to make content like I used to. And I hope with the combination of the community as well as my friends supporting me that I can get back to, contributing to this community in a big way again. So if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to hit subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our video.
Yeah, I'm okay with less of the contributions, Freedo. Okay, well, I'm sorry, guys. That was just... Jesus Christ. That was hard. It was super boring, I know. I don't know how you could watch it. Oh, it's a lot better when you're trying to engage with the arguments and actually trying to make sense of what he's saying, I think. Worst stream ever, I was done in 10 minutes. What a waffler. White noise. Well, I thought he'd have something to say, but it's just absolutely nothing. Like, it's just... There's nothing there. I thought hell doesn't exist. Jesus Christ. 3-hour Freedo video with Ralph? It's only been 2.5 hours. Random words glued together to make a sentence, but then use brain in it isn't a sentence? Yeah. He's not even wrong, as they say. Yeah, he's not... He's not wrong because he's never made an argument. Just Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Well, I'm sorry for having you sit through that. That was quite entertaining though. Not coherent enough to be wrong. Yeah, that's true. the comments. I just like 6v6 better. I don't know. 101. I was excited for 5v5 initially. You can never tell me that 5v5 is better for tank. You just can't. Jesus. 5v5 is over flat earth. The amount of times you've told us we actually don't know what this means or works is actually frustrating. Yeah, all he does is just tell you don't understand the video game. Somebody's commented the 50% dislike video ratio on the vid is crazy, but also warranted. 2.9k likes, 2.8k dislikes. Freedo failed to talk about the fact that making heroes like Roadhog and Winston less counterable by certain things affects other heroes negatively in a way that's unhealthy for the game. Yeah, there's knock-on effects. The insecurity about sounding smart is killing me slowly. For someone who wants to patronize everyone by teaching them debate tactics, you sure do use straw man arguments a lot. I think the thing is, right, you very quickly realize when you start talking to people that some people are just capable of just spreading their brain really far and wide without really having a topic to keep to, and they think that they're making sense. You sir are officially fried. That's me 90% of the time just yapping. It makes sense in my head though, yeah. It really seems like at this point, Freedo's only argument is we don't have enough tank players for 6v6. Q times would be bad. Yeah, it's so funny that Freedo just gave up all the arguments on the tank play experience. But like the Q times are bad right now in fights into a hog mirror matchup though. Q times are approximately 2 times as good. Then the worst that Overwatch 1 ever was, probably. 6v6 had oppressive metas the entire time and loads of complaints too. Did it have impressive metas the entire time? Or was it just fucked in terms of the actual devs? Damage being irrelevant while being the most popular role? Nobody's argued that damage is irrelevant in 6v6. That's disingenuous. It's not about having an argument. Why do you think an argument matters when it comes to facts? I can't argue against facts unless I use wishful thinking, which I refuse to do. I live in reality. I always, like, comments like this, I can't argue against facts unless I use wishful thinking, which I refuse to do. I live in reality. Just, how can you live with yourself and talk like that? Dive the best playstyle? No, Dive is the best playstyle if there is a healthy balance between all of the playstyles. Dive is the most fun to play, probably not the most fun to play against. Do you think he's a mentor? I don't think he's a mentor implicit. Do you know why? Because he definitely would have fucking told us who he was. Like dislike isn't reality, bud. Are you trolling? We already explained reveal versus stated preferences in the video. You should know better. Jesus. I like seeing him mold. I've listened to all your points, but I have to say you contradict yourself too many times when you want to stay on the same page. For example, you said in 6v6 tank synergies requires certain tanks to only be played with their synergy. Then you said that in Overwatch 2 tanks can hold their own with their reworks. Adding 6v6 in Overwatch 2 does not mean going back to Overwatch 1, which would mean any tank could hypothetically be played in 6v6 despite harsh synergies. Yeah, he just talks past himself all the time and doesn't realize he's doing it. The reason the tribalism arose with 6v6 is because we're constantly being ridiculed, dismissed, and invalidated. The cool and newer Overwatch 2 was in town, and 6v6 were an embarrassment and reputation of the lame dead Overwatch 1 game. There are true trade-offs, none of which you've addressed in this comment from Freedo. Almost as if you ignored every point and instead have your feelings hurt. You don't seem to realise that you're displaying tribalism in every word of this comment while not really hearing anything said. Literally the opposite of what you claim I said is what's actually in the video. Imagine that in-game, how far off the mark you can be to say the opposite of the text of the video. Name a contradiction. You talk about the synergies being impactful, and then in the next sentence you turn around and say the synergies weren't that impactful. I thought about rewatching every part of your video a few times to reinforce my comment, but halfway through typing I thought to myself, do I even care? Watch the next vid. Oh my god, he's responding to it. Jesus Christ. I won't submit you to more Freedo in the future, okay? That's my promise to you. I will not submit you to more Freedo in the future. The guy said that he enjoyed counterpicking and thinks others do too. Everything you say afterwards doesn't matter anymore. Draft mode is what stops that. It does not stop that. It makes it worse. It just means you do it in the spawn room so that you can end up locked out the characters you want to play in the spawn room and hate your life even more. Oh, let's reduce the hero diversity. That's always gone well. The game does not have enough content to reduce the diversity in the content. It has very poor amounts of content delivery, and that's fine because it's good quality content when it gets delivered. But if you do map pools, if you do hero bans, you end up just reducing the amount of players that want to play the game. It existed so harshly in Overwatch 1 that entire comps were counterpicked by hero addition / synergies. That's bad balance. Don't let Blizzard get away with bad balance by making it so that players can ban the bad balance. You're just saying that Brig would have been fine if we could ban Brig, but then we'd have to ban Brig every fucking game because Blizzard would never fix her. By the way, I just want to say I'm gonna start spreading as a reference to obviously Mauga. Mauga there, make Overwatch great again. Obviously pronounced Mauga is the 6v6 calling card. That's what you got to start spreading around, Mauga. People need to get on this. Mauga is a great acronym for it. Oh, they've actually brought the point that the 66 adjustment workshop code was all you had to do. What was he responded? The best improvements they made were in the abandoned times, though. Also, the major problem isn't the function, it's the queue times. So basically, he's saying, I've argued against the function and how it's hard to do, but I don't want to talk about this when you bring good evidence that it can be fixed. Like, literally, what is this? How do you not engage with the argument? They're arguing that the function is good, and you're like, I want to talk about the queue times. They argue that the queue times are good, and you say, I want to talk about the function. You just, whoop, dodge. Can't hit me. Can't argue with me if I'm not talking about the same topic. Got Solar Blossom 3 times. You deserved it. You're probably playing Sombra. F you abusing health packs. What the hell? Abusing health packs. Man, Ren, you sure did get the things that are available on the map. Mac made health packs in Paris here. The brain rot. That's fucked up, Ren. Yo, what the fuck are you doing? You're disgusting. Apart from obvious gameplay differences, Overwatch wanted a much better reward system. Okay, I don't care about that. The reward system had to be changed, and I don't think people should have been as outraged by it. I never cared about the change of the monetization system personally. I think they actually handled it in a really reasonable manner. As I said, the type of monetization system they were using was banned in multiple countries, so like they couldn't keep using it. I don't think either will be balanced in a way that keeps the community happy long term. So therefore, we just... But that's always the argument. Oh yeah, it's not going to be balanced in a good enough way, and the community will never be happy. Therefore, we may as well stick with what we got. That's always it, right? It's not worth it. They're never going to be happy anyway. Come on, you don't want them to put in all that effort for no reason when the community's just going to be unhappy. I hate that argument. It's disgusting. I dislike Freedo. This video made me feel sorry for him because he's just having a mental breakdown. 5v5 naturally promotes strategy diversity because you can counterpick. Not just the tank, but you can counter anything on the enemy team if you wanted to. No, you fucking can't. How do you counter a Kiriko? How do you counter a Cassidy? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Are we playing the same video game? How do you counter a Torbjorn? How do you counter... Like, the only counter in the game is that Flashbang counters Venture and Tracer. That's the only other counter apart from... Like, sure, you can go dive into into things that can be dove. What other counter is there? Like, what counter is there? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, what? Sombra counters Widow? But these are like edge cases, right? And it's not even a hard counter. Sombra doesn't hard counter Widow in any way, shape, or form. They're really soft counters in the DPS category. Apart from the obvious Hinder that is a travesty to the world. Abandon it. Some logical fallacies that may be present in this video. Some of these are debatable. Ad hominem. People support 6v6 because they're delusional flat earthers. False dilemma. It's like, and this is the biggest, like, you shove your fedora on so hard that it will never come off your head before you start reading this. Jesus Christ. Poisoning the well. He did poison the well massively. Yeah, claims to steel man the 6v6 position, but you left out arguments and evidence that could have made the 6v6 position look stronger. Yeah, if I made a video about a 6v6 and 5v5, I'd say about half of the times, like half of the runtime would be properly addressing the arguments one by one of 5v5 and then countering them. Jesus Christ. Statistic fallacy, misuse the concept of an outlier, saying the October patch was great. Let's get back to that. It's not the same as saying let's focus on a data point at the far end of the bell curve. Also, sometimes outliers are actually important. No, like, this is actually true. Maybe this person's not just sniffing his own farts and pretending to be smart by going through fallacies. Maybe he's actually engaged with the video. Did you know I actually took debating club in high school? Yeah, I took it for about 6 months and I dropped out. I didn't get a qualification in it. Did you know I know what the logical fallacies are? Is the 5v5 6v6 debate the biggest community divide in Overwatch history? Yes. Yes, definitely. And there's been no similar divide. Most of the time, it's been the player base against the devs. Now it's the player base against idiots in the player base, like Freedo. I took debating class in university. Random, could you list me? You took debating? List me 20 logical fallacies. Ad hominem requires the insult to be the argument. Then why'd you do it for half your fucking runtime if it's not the argument? Ignoring evidence is never good. No, the argument was you should not listen to these people because they are similar to flat earthers, etc. You can't compare people to flat earth. You can't accuse someone of being a Nazi and then say that, oh no, I was engaging with your arguments after I called you a Nazi, so it doesn't really matter. Hey Mills. This has been the most boring Why does he not make any sense, Mills? Why can't he talk about one particular topic for more than 15 seconds before changing the topic? Like, it's like a section for 6v6 argument, and he just starts talking about other things. And I swear this video was scripted, right? Do you think this video was scripted? Or am I just crazy? But I don't know how you could script this and then still have so many topic changes that don't make sense. Like the section for the October patch. He covered 4 different topics in this, and none of them were about the October patch. Like the one thing he talked about for the October patch was that maybe the balancing of the tank rolls at the high level weren't gonna like pan out for low level, and also the game was gonna get less well balanced and less things would be available because people were gonna work out the meta over time. Right? That was the arguments he had. But then he just like went off the fucking track and started talking about something else immediately. He said my tilting was political radicalization strategies. I don't know what is going on with him these days. Oh, titling, sorry, yeah. Titling, yes. By the way, I absolutely love your titling, and I do not, like, who the fuck cares? This is a random fucking argument on the internet. Why are we acting like we should be this, like, big, wholesome community who all love each other and, like, lock arms? Like, why can't we... I don't complain at him for calling people flat earthers. I think it's stupid. I think he's stupid for doing it. But I think it's quite funny. And if you want to put Sam's videos out and be like... use the word they in it, and he complains about that. It's like, you're doing the same thing, and I don't even care, and why should I care? It's a random argument on the internet about 6v6 versus 5v5. As long as you're being honest in the argument, what does the title matter? Can you check the Great March debate from SCB 13220? I can. I don't know, man. He's pretty cooked. It's not that serious. It's all content at the end of the day. Yeah, like, what are you talking about? Why do you care? Oh god.
All right, everyone. Well.
And like, why just listen to what he actually says in the video and argue against that? Like, don't spend 5 minutes talking about the radicalization of the community. Just shut up. Jesus. What time did you want? 132.20. Man, I love hearing Freedo talk. It's just so nice to me. Told Sam to just publicly blame me for anything we do with the channel because I could care less. Yeah, I feel like it's awful because I get the impression from Sam that he does care about this person that clearly just like wants to throw shit at him. And I never see Sam talking in a bad way in any way, shape or form. I always see him being very careful with the way he speaks, and he is very careful about his public image, and he just can't do anything about it because people just throw shit for no reason, just all the time. Titles need to be hooks, yeah, of course. You can't have them not be.
The playability of the shooter game itself is better now. Too much of 6v6 was not a shooter game, and we were praying that we would get some MOBA players in to fill the queue times, and that never happened for 6 years. So while maybe the peak beauty of the competitive esport game, Overwatch 6v6, has higher potential, would agree on that for sure, we just did not have the player base to sustain that long term, and 5v5 is sustainable and has been sustainable. And the queue time argument about supports, agree with that as well. Broken role. Having a broken role is probably not good for the game regardless, but I think that also only really applies for high tier matchmaking. When I say high tier, I mean maybe like top 5%. I'm not exactly sure if even when support was broken, if it was the most popular. Like we have to be careful having a overly high level focus on this, because what matters just as much is the queue times for quick play, the queue times for the 70% of players that play this that, you know, are just trying to have fun. Those queue times were not necessarily as bad, even when support was broken, I think. I could be
Flats just looks so defeated. He looks so defeated.
wrong on that, but my queue times are always a minute on every roll, just about. I know Sam shows us his queue times because he's the best, God's gift to Overwatch in many ways at every roll. That your queue times, even for queue time, for quick play, are long. But I think, yeah, it's got to function for all players, and I think this version of the game can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the queue times aren't good at the moment. I don't know.
Thank you. And of course, this is
Is
not
this what you wanted me to watch?
to say this is the final word. By no means is it the final word on the topic, but it's a good summation, and I think you guys have done a good job actually keeping it pretty brief. So I respect that you did. Heartwarming moment for me because I appreciate just the exchange of ideas here. And Sam in particular, I feel like you kept it very respectful, so I appreciate you. And I love that we can have these healthy exchange of ideas. And I love all three of you guys, even though we've had one silent partner for a while. So I'm gonna take it to him for a little bit. Flats, you've heard now two sides of the argument. I've got another thing coming in a second, but you tell me, what did you feel about all that as someone in the middle?
It's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. To be honest with you, I think there's some points that are maybe being like either misconstrued or misremembered. I think one of the great points is like queue times, right? Queue times in Overwatch 1 were very long for especially DPS players. That's how we kind of got like the reactive video meta.
When in Overwatch 1, please tell me when.
Where everyone just watch videos.
People just say Overwatch 1. Really, they mean the last 6 months of Overwatch 1 when it's been abandoned for a year and a half.
Some you'd watch daily dose internet and food videos or whatever. But even today, like, hell, like I'm not even that high ranked anymore. Like, I mean, like, yeah, I guess I'm like top 100, top 500, but like, fuck, that's like Masters 1 right now, which is kind of embarrassing, but whatever. But the point is, though, it's like, my queue times like playing are still like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes duo queue with car queue, and car queue's not super high rank either. So queue times are not like they're instant anymore, like at this current stage for any role. And going to 66, I think would probably make it even longer for the DPS and support. But then again, support had super long queues not too long ago when the role was broken. So I think it depends on a lot of different things. You know, and it's like, what is fun? And tank just ain't it. Like, it's just not fun. Like, tank, people play tank because they enjoy playing tank either in Overwatch or other games, and it's always been the role that people play the least, because at the end of the day, Overwatch is a competitive FPS, like a first person.
And they introduce the tickets that only DPS is using, like picking hogs. It's just awful, isn't it? Like the worst edition. Yeah, no, it genuinely was probably the worst addition to Overwatch 1. It probably caused the most amount of damage. And the worst part is, one of the only, like, it was actually reasonably fixable in terms of actually making it do something for queue times. And all you had to do was make it so that you only got a ticket if you won. And you got 1 ticket instead of 7. It's not that difficult. It's really not that difficult. Jesus Christ. Come on, guys. Like, 7 to 1 being your ratio does not help in any way. Oh, look, a viewer bot. Okay, I'm gonna head. Oh, this has been brain dead, and I'm sorry that I was here. I never ran out of tickets. I was always full of tickets. Yeah, of course. Of course you are. Why wouldn't you be full on tickets? You get 7 for a win. Like, what? 7 is a big number. Like, it made no sense whatsoever. It was crazy. And it just yeah, as I said, just made the DPS players go to hog, and that's all they did, and it ruined the experience for the other players. How will you redeem yourself? I might throw some pugs tomorrow, something like that, maybe. I thought it was only 3. Was it only 3? Still 3 to 1's pretty crazy. It said multiple. Doesn't say how many. How many passes did we get per win? I might just misremembering this. 6 for a win and 1 for a loss. There you go. I was closer than you. I mean, there you go, Brad. I was closer. We were both wrong, but I was closer. 6 for a win. Why would you give players a priority pass for picking a hog, throwing a game, and then allow them back into the DPS queue? The thing is, when you split the SRs, they have no reason to ever care about their SR, because if you want as many DPS games as possible, do you know what you actually should do in order to get as many DPS games as possible with the least amount of tank games? You should actively throw your tank SR as low as possible, and then when you want the priority passes, you should win. Like, you have no incentive to ever climb on tank. There's no incentive, because you get something for losing. Screenshot with 20-minute queue time with pass? Stupid. God, what a terrible idea.